Robert, welcome to the James Garcia podcast. So I want to thank you for joining me today.
It is a huge privilege. It's the highlight of my week. All week, because we've been filming today, and I said, I've got to get back. I can't be late. I'm doing the J. Garcia podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. You are in Britain, right?
I am in the damp, soggy island off the coast of Europe. Yes.
There you go. Yes, and so it's just a long-range conversation that we're having here. Yes,
yeah.
But these are very common today, these days.
Very
right?
normal. Yeah.
Yes, very normal. Yeah, this is common, almost like a normal thing that we all do now.
We just do it all the time. Yeah.
We Zoom with our friends across the world. In some ways, we're doing it more often. My wife is in more contact now with her friends that live abroad. It's crazy.
All over the place. It's crazy, isn't it? That side of it is crazy, yeah. I mean, 'cause we have my wife is Australian. We have a lot of Australian family and connections in Australia, and we talk to them probably more than our neighbours who live across the lane. You know, it's just...
That's right, that's right.
There's always someone on the line going, "Hi, Robert, is Judy there? Hello?" No, you don't have to shout. Even though you're in Australia, you have to reassure them.
That's right. Yes. But hopefully we will be able to see each other again soon. The last time we saw each other, well, actually, we didn't see each other.
Well, no, because in fact, I was just talking about that today, because there was someone I was working with today who I'd last seen in Austin the day before I had to come back. I cannot tell you how annoying that was. So, I mean, for your viewers and listeners, I mean, we had a fully charged live show in Austin, Texas, where I'd met you the year before, I think, when we first came out to see venues and things.
Yes, the pre-show, show.
Yeah, the pre-show show. And then the day before, basically, I'd been very unwell last year. It's boring, nothing to do with the pandemic. It's old men illness, and which had never happened to me before, but I'd been in hospital for some time, come out, got sort of better, I thought it's so exciting, going to Austin, felt fine when I got off the plane, and then I could tell I was gradually going down. I was going, no, I'll be all right, I can make it. And then the day before, I just knew this isn't going to work, you know, I'm going to...
yeah.
You just want to lie down in a dark room, you know. So anyway, I had to come back. And then my wife, who'd come with me, she was there and said, "I can't believe how much fun I've had at one of your weird things." So she really enjoyed it. So it sounded like it went very well. And
yeah, it was amazing. There were so many people, so many panels. Yeah. I was kind of unable to watch anything other than my two panels because I was talking to people the entire time. You just can't go anywhere because you're there, and then people are like, "Hey, you know," they want to talk to you about.
Because I mean, that is a thing that I've certainly noticed at our shows here, and that's one of the reasons I think psychologically I was exhausted before it started, because I've been on the TV in the UK for nearly 40 years, so it does happen to me that people will come up in the street, and it's nice. It's not a bad thing. Not that often. I'm not that well known, but it will happen. People come up and go, "Hey, I love your show. Or can I do a selfie?" You know, 2 or 3 times a week when you're at Fully Charged Live, there's no one there that doesn't know that I do Fully Charged, that, you know, all that stuff. So there's, you know, in the last show in the UK, 12,500 people over a weekend was very tiring.
Yeah.
But wonderful. You know, that's the thing. It's exhausting at the end of a day when someone wants the 5,000th selfie.
Yes.
It's great. And you don't want to be rude and horrible, but it is, you know, you just want to lie down.
Yeah, you realize at the end of the day, you're like, I just spent 16 hours talking to people, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you're like, whoa.
Yeah. And everybody everyone would have known you there because of the topic and what we're doing, you know. If that was a show about embroidery or extreme knitting, maybe less people.
Yes. Well, yeah, it's crazy because this is for me, I'm a regular guy, right? I'm just a regular. And it's, in some circles, I am famous, right? But it's the best way to be famous. I'm famous on the internet. Out here in my town, no one knows what I do. No one cares. Yeah. No one talks to me. I can go to the store. I can be normal, you know. I can hide. I'm kind of antisocial. So I totally love that part of it. And so, but that day, you know, to tell the truth, I was in the top, you know, creator there, because there was, you know,
there was a lot.
Rich was the star there. Ben Sullins and his little crew. And now those guys were getting like mobbed. I mean, they couldn't go anywhere. They needed to be escorted
Yes.
from place to place,
They needed-
kind of
yeah,
thing.
They needed close body protection.
Yeah. So I mean, it was pretty good. It was very.
Well, we're praying that we've got 2 possible dates next year. And the thing, of course, is always happens. The Circuit of the Americas. I mean, it's an amazing venue, but it's kind of odd, and it's kind of not connected with what we're doing, and it's a bit out of town. Whereas of course, when we were there the few days before this year, we found the venue in the middle of Austin on the river. It's the most beautiful building, which is where we're doing it next time. And it'll either be late summer or towards the end of next year. We're hoping. I mean, I think actually we've got another. We're just hoping next year is going to be not perfect but better. But I think it still might not be possible to do something till 2022. I don't know. We'll see what we can do.
Whoa, gee, yeah. Let's let's hope
hope
that after these elections and everybody forgets about this.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have a theory that it's a lot of it here in the U.S. is politically motivated. A lot of these restrictions. So if that's the case, we will be fine.
Yeah.
We'll be fine at the end of this year.
It's so hard to know, isn't it? Because I mean, there are. I think that's a thing of our times. That if I think back 10 years, I had a set of fairly gently held political opinions that fitted into some categories.
Yeah.
And that's what I believed, and that's what I felt. But I got on with other people who didn't agree with that, and that's fine. And now I've got 4 opinions in that pocket, 2 in that, 1 in there. They're all totally contradictory.
Yeah.
And I'm going, wait a minute, what's happened? I don't agree. I either don't agree with anyone, or I more or less agree with everyone from right across the political spectrum. It's a very fractured.
Yeah, and
period.
people are so polarized, right? It's like
so
you're either
polarized,
you're with me or you're against me. You're my friend or you're my enemy. There's no in between.
My arch enemy. Yeah.
It's just so crazy.
It's so important to try and bridge that, isn't it? I'm really working hard to, when the people I know who I know I disagree with, friends and family, I really make an effort to find common ground. And
you guys are now living after Brexit, or did Brexit happen, or did not happen?
No, well, it's a bit like the pandemic. You're not quite sure what's going on.
You don't know when it's going to start and when it's going to end?
It's end of December where we are out of the European Union. We don't know what the arrangements are yet. They still haven't agreed it. They won't agree it till the last minute. If it's a no deal, so all the hardline people who are desperate for Brexit and have been for decades, desperately want a no deal Brexit. They want to get rid of Europe, and they don't see us. Geographically, it's kind of hard to argue we're not part of Europe. We're quite close.
Yeah.
So they want us tied to America. That's where it's that cohort of. But then everyone, what I find worrying, because I don't know anything about it, but everyone I've ever met, spoken to, read about, who is well-educated, well-travelled, has a passport, goes around the world, talks to other people, can speak other languages, goes, and it's not political, it's trade, it's economic. This is an economic disaster. Because we trade huge amounts of our trade is with Europe, of course.
With Europe,
If we make nice jam here, we can sell it in France. It's only over the water. It's 20 miles. It's nothing. You can see it. Wow. If you stand on a hill in Kent, you can see France. It's just there. It's like,
and that will have an effect also on cars too, right? On the automotive.
That's the big problem.
Market.
So any cars that we've got a few car factories left here. The one I know well is the Nissan factory, where they make the Nissan Leaf for Europe. The European market is supplied from a factory in the UK. If they can't export those cars without tariffs into Europe, they're going to close. They'll close that factory.
It'll be the end of that.
You can't blame them. They'll make the cars in Europe.
Wow.
So it's unknown because it's a very contentious issue, and if British people heard me saying this, they would have a huge list of abusive terms to describe my negativity. So I think Brexit is marvellous. I think it's a wonderful decision that the British public made, and I thoroughly support it.
I remember the reason I asked this. I remember I spoke to a British gentleman a few years ago, and we were on the eve of electing Trump that time, right? Yeah. And then he goes, "Oh, you guys will be fine. The American president has zero power whatsoever, And then I was telling my brother yesterday, you know what? I go, he was right, because here we are, Trump's elected, and it's for peeps. half the people are like, this is the end of the world.
Yeah.
Yet life continues. I mean,
You carry on. Yeah.
it hasn't changed
Yeah.
our everyday lives. I mean, some of us are doing way better than we were 4 years ago, you know?
Right. Yeah.
In fact, a lot of people are doing a lot better. Some people are hurting, you know, but I mean, I think that's always been the case, no matter who's out at the helm, right? And I think it's all going to come down after, I'm hoping that after these elections, everything goes back to semi-normalcy.
Yeah. Because I mean, I think that's the. Well, I mean, we should talk about electric vehicles and renewable energy at some point, but
Yeah.
we don't have to. But no, I think that we do get a distorted image of your president outside America because we don't know the kind of day-to-day lives. That's not getting on the news, you know. So all we see is the most caustic, the most divisive, the most, you know, and so kind of crazy stuff that this dude says, which is sometimes funny. Sometimes
I have a feeling that we get the same. I don't think
well, you probably do, but I mean, you're also I know it from the time I've spent in the US that you kind of go, oh my God, it's Bush when it was President Bush, crazy Bush. When you're here, then you get there and you go, people are just going shopping and walking down the street and going to the movies, and it's like normal. Whereas you can, if you're outside it, you think everyone's living in terror in case President Trump says something rude, which
Yeah, it's hard to know what's really happening in the world. We think that it's the end of the world, but I'm like, man, I see people at the park. Yeah, we have to wear these dumb masks. Yeah. But it's not the end of the world. People are like, this is atrocious. Our freedoms are being stolen, and you're like, just wear the mask. And you're making that other family over there, uncomfortable. Just wear your mask.
Yeah.
It's not that big a deal.
Is it? No, we have the same here.
Yes.
Actually, I mean, I think we've turned some sort of corner in the last 6 weeks because our numbers have gone up. The same thing has happened all around the world, and everywhere you go now, everyone's got a mask on. Always, there's no exceptions. It's extraordinary. Whereas we're a grumpy bunch of. I'm not going to do that. I'm not wearing a mask. And that's gone. It's gone. Everyone wears them. I mean, I think it's because enough people now know someone who's either got it, had it, died of it.
Yeah.
It's gone. I have a lot of friends, and our main editor, has been really seriously unwell for a long time because it's revealed underlying problems he had. So it's like not just COVID, it's what COVID did to him. It's been and thank goodness he's survived and he's all right at the moment. He's worked because he's such a brilliant editor. From a purely selfish point of view.
Yeah.
We need that guy.
Don't die on us now.
Yeah. But then, we've had a lot of people I know, neighbours of mine have passed away from it who are in their 70s and 80s, But so we know people who've,
I had a couple of people in my family that got it, and they were ill for a little while in the hospital. Right. And it was such a weird thing because we're like, well, we heard about it, but we weren't there because they don't let anyone at the hospital. It's such a weird new reality that we're living.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Right? My wife had surgery from some unrelated thing, and I couldn't go with her.
Wow. And this was during the kind of, in the recent time.
Yeah, this is a couple, months ago.
You couldn't go and visit her?
I couldn't go in, I had to stay out in the car, wait around. Yeah. I'm like, I guess I went with her, but I'm out here, by myself in the car watching YouTube. Yeah, it was very strange. Very strange times that we're living in that aspect, right? But life goes on.
Yeah.
Electric cars are being made and announced.
All over the place. Yeah.
Right? Did you have
I just had one delivered, bizarrely. I've got a Peugeot 2008.
Oh, yes.
Where are they? Yeah. Which I haven't even been in, so I've just got back. There's the keys.
Oh, look at that.
So I haven't even sat in it. I've not looked at it. I'll see it tomorrow.
Wow.
Morning.
Yeah, you review all those, for us, Americans, weird cars. Because sometimes they're not here, right? They're just like...
Well, the VW ID3, so that's the most recent I've done, which I'm a bit of a fan. I mean, I just think that is... that was an interesting thing how... I don't know that they were American. One was definitely American, but because I was going, this is amazing, this is, and it's a big company, and their factory that they make this car in is extraordinary. They have gone the whole hog, they haven't mucked around. So it's a huge, very, very old car factory. 1904 it was set up.
Wow.
And it if you remember...
that means that maybe my bus was made in that factory.
It's not impossible. No, it won't have been because it was in what was East Germany. So until the wall came down, so that would have been made when was that made?
This is a 67, but I have a 57.
So that would have been made.
Yeah.
That would probably be made in Wolfsburg, which is on the west side. Yeah. So this was Zwickau, which was in East Germany, and it was where the Trabant was made. So it wasn't always. It's only been a VW factory more recently. So the Trabant was the Soviet era. All people can have car. Which were the most. I don't know if you know. If you Google Trabant, you will see these were the most appalling cars. 2-stroke.
Very square looking, right?
Little Soviet car. Yeah. And that was where that was made. But that factory is now 100% renewably powered, which, when you think of a big car factory, that's a challenge. So it's massive solar, massive batteries, huge wind farm, huge solar farms, and hydroelectric. They generate all their own electricity to make these. Very interesting.
They look nice. I'm a fan of how they.
Trabant. I think there's some people electrifying Trabants, and there is definitely
61S. Yes, I would electrify that.
Yeah, there's an electric Trabant dragster, I think.
Oh, there you go.
That has, so they're kind of there's stuff like that. But yeah, I mean that was the. It became this really cool thing for the West when the wall came down. All the West German kids wanted a Trabant. Because, it was a cool car to get. And they were terrible cars. They broke down all the time. There's smoke. They were 2-stroke.
2-stroke.
I've seen them driving past.
It's like a lawnmower.
I've been in one. Yeah.
Like a lawnmower, essentially.
It had a little lawnmower engine in the front. Loads of smoke coming out the back. Just amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, that car was amazing. And then I got not a lot, but some quite caustic criticism on YouTube from people because I said if I have a lease on a Tesla Model 3. When that runs out in a few years' time, this is right at the top of my list of what I want to get. And that made Tesla people furious. How can you consider anything other than a Tesla? It's a rubbish car and it's made by... And because of Dieselgate, which is a much bigger story in the US.
Dieselgate, it's a hard one. I even find myself giving them a break. Right? I consider I'm a huge VW fan. I drive VWs. Yeah, but I almost consider a different thing. It's the old VW, which is full of Germans and, full of Nazis. Those are okay, better than the modern. In my eyes, which is weird. I don't know why I think we felt so betrayed by them.
It was a bad thing to do because I'd had so many VWs, Beetles, Golfs, every type of Golf. My last pure combustion car was a Golf.
Yeah.
I loved them and I had them for years and they were brilliant cars, they were great. And then when that happened, it made me really angry. It was like being cheated on by a lover or being spurned by a mate and it just went, what are you doing? What?
Yeah.
Because
and then because it was multiple times too, right? Yeah, it's not like they did it once. It was one executive or one. It was like
it was a lot of people for a long time.
It seems like it was everyone at the top. It was just a thing that they were doing, and they were okay with it.
And in terms of Brexit, it's quite an interesting story because I heard about this for maybe a couple of years before the story broke. About cheating devices, and it meant nothing. It was like new language. It was like hybrid car. When you first heard that, you went, "What the hell is that?"
Yes.
And it was a cheating device. I didn't know what it meant, which engineers here told me about, and engineers in Europe who worked in the automotive industry. And then I heard, when you hear the whole story, those cars were tested in Europe. They were tested by the regulatory bodies all over Europe. They all said they're fine. They're really clean. They've got no problem. And it was the California Air Resource Board and the EPA in the olden days of the EPA that went, hang on a minute, that's not right. And there is a university, it was a university that also developed the test for it and found it was 400 times more than they said. Not 4 times or 10 times, 400 times worse.
Yes.
It's really shocking. And that, in a way, shows how it's normal political corruption in the small c, that the European governments... The car industry is huge, particularly in Germany, the most powerful country in Europe. Huge industry, employs millions of people. And are they going to say we can't sell these cars because they've got You know, no, well, just it's fine. They're clean. It's clean. Buy the diesel. It's clean. You know, and you go, that is not good. It doesn't shine well on the European regulatory system, which I would assume was really above board and beyond reproach. No, it isn't. It's just as corrupt as anywhere else, and it's pretty. Pretty bad.
It was an egregious sin. I mean, you know, it was weird, and so it's weird that we feel so strongly about that and about them. You know, here they're filling the United States with charging stations, so it's a good thing came out of it,
and
right?
Here too.
Yeah,
I can go to my local store and plug the car in free, and it says sponsored by Volkswagen on it. So I had to take, when I had the ID3. I was pretty confident that was, because it was a press car, that was the first one that was ever plugged. So there's all these commercials about the ID3, which haven't been released yet. The public haven't got them. And I drove the ID3 and plugged it. I didn't need to. It was nearly full. But I plugged it in. So, yes, I'm plugging it.
Oh, there
I'm using some of Volkswagen's money to do that. No, they put in chargers all over the place. But it's not a beautiful car. It's just a really practical next generation. It's not like a lot of the car companies that make combustion cars and have now had to make an electric one. It's a kind of compromise between the two. You know, it's a bit like driving a gas car, except it's electric, but it kind of looks the same, feels the same. This is totally different. It's designed from the ground up. The way the wheels are placed in the body, it's right in the corners because there's this tray of battery underneath. The biggest battery you get in a car that is the size of a Golf is 77 kilowatt hours.
Wow, yeah.
So that is I haven't tried it yet, but I would think a genuine 320 to 350 mile range car, which is, for a small car like that, amazing. You know, it is incredible what they're doing.
Yeah,
just very quickly, their whole aim is that all they know is the prices of these cars will go down, which isn't it? They can't say it. They're not saying it very loud publicly because they want to sell them now. But they're starting at around £30,000 in the UK, so... I don't know what, 35 plus $1,000 for the basic model. But they are producing so many of them. This massive factory will churn them out by the hundreds of thousands a year that the economies of scale will start to finally kick in. I mean, and their battery supply, 42 billion euros they spent securing their battery supply. Whoa. I think that shows quite a big commitment.
Yeah. Do we know who's the battery supplier?
Should know. I can't remember. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I can't remember.
So, that's a legitimate attempt at making a compelling vehicle. That's not the problem with all the cars that have existed up until recent times, right? It's like, you're not really trying. You're making this little car that is not really compelling. You know, not a compelling product. Now, once they start putting some batteries in there, some, large size batteries. Now we're talking, and they do have the ability to produce cars. They know how to make cars because they've been making cars for a long time. Yeah. It's not like Tesla. Tesla's struggling. They know how to make technology. They just don't know how to manufacture cars yet. They're learning as they're going.
Because that's the thing I've heard today. So today I was interviewing a guy that leases cars, just electric cars, thousands of them, all different makes. And when I got my Model 3, which was about just over a year ago, he said, "Oh, you're so lucky. You've got some of the early batches." No, I've never had any problem with it at all. Nothing's ever gone wrong with it. It's been fine. But now the new ones he's getting now, he had 24 cars delivered, 24 Model 3s to lease, and 19 of them immediately went back because there was faults and problems.
Whoa.
And that's kind of quite a lot.
That's
and they've had because mine's never done anything except work. I've never had any problem of any sort.
Same with ours,
just break down on the freeway and they slow down and stop and there's nothing. It's dead. And you go, I didn't know that could even happen. I mean, I've been nervous driving back tonight. I was going, I hope it's all right.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, there's definitely, I can sort of, now I've kind of got used to looking at lots of different cars, which I never did before I did this. Yeah. I can see the build quality arguments about it. But to be honest, in my car, it makes no difference. You know, if one of the panels is like that much further apart than it should be, if it's not leaking water,
yes,
I don't really care. I mean, it doesn't really show.
I know that people are revere them like they're holy items or objects, right? But I'm like, it's a car. I'm driving
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's gonna get scratched. Yes, it's gonna
Yes,
get scratched. I'm gonna be
exactly.
driving it. We're gonna
Yeah.
be going places. We're gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing. They're just cars, and
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So yeah, whenever they're talking about the inconsistencies and the gaps, and you're going like,
Yeah.
who cares? I mean, if
Yeah.
they're really bad, I guess it's a thing, right?
If
When
the
you're
wheel
paying-
falls off, yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah, it's not. It's definitely not the end of the world. And of course, I get it. Some of the early people that were buying Teslas were high end. They
Yeah.
were kind
They
of
would be
rich
used to
people.
luxury cars with very good servicing and all that stuff. I think that's. I don't know if that's the same case in the US, but here, there's definitely become more of a problem if you want your car serviced. If you've got a Tesla and you want it serviced, because our
Yes.
servicing, the servicing infrastructure in the UK is probably 3 years behind the number of cars that are here, because there's a lot of them now.
Yes.
There's a hell of a lot
Yeah.
of Model 3s on the road. It's a very
Yeah.
common sight.
But the good thing
So-
is, like, I have one of these early ones, I guess, that also don't no issues whatsoever. So I've never had to service it at all.
No, nor me. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I've done nothing. Yeah, it's been fine.
We put washer window
Yeah.
fluid, and that's about
Yeah.
it. It's
Yes.
like
That's, yeah, that's my biggest anxiety is, oh my God, have I got enough washer fluid?
yeah. Well, that's cool. So let's go to the beginning. You told me a great story when I met you. Because I was like, how did you start this? Like, how did you're an actor primarily, right? That's what you.
Well, I'm not
you've
really.
done?
No, I mean, it was a mistake. The acting,
was a
they
mistake.
shouldn't have let me on. They should
Really?
never have- I didn't. I mean, it wasn't something. It was definitely not something I wanted to do. To
Okay.
be an actor. So I started doing comedy performing, I suppose you could call it, in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and there was an explosion of. It was called alternative comedy in the UK at that time. So a lot of the TV stars that are around now, roughly my age, now old blokes, kind of started their careers then. I didn't do TV then, but I did theatre. And I did enjoy that. It was fun, but it wasn't. You wouldn't call it acting. It was singing, dancing, performing, pulling silly faces, silly accents. It was all very, it's comedy. It's a comedy show, sketch show.
Sketch.
But I was in a group with 4 people, a brilliant musician, 3 performers, 2 of whom could really sing, had proper oh my God, that guy can sing. And I would mime along with them.
Okay.
Because I could, if I did singing, it looked like I was singing. It looked like I had a really good voice.
Wow.
But so that I enjoyed, and then I wrote a play for someone else to be in, and that person pulled out at the last minute, and I stepped in. I was the only person who knew it. It was real, and I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a playwright, which I'm glad I didn't do very well. But anyway, that play was a hit at the Edinburgh Festival. There's a big cultural festival in Edinburgh in Scotland every year, and that, for whatever reason, that play just caught fire there. Those shows, there's thousands of shows on in Edinburgh during the festival. I mean, literally thousands. It's not a metaphorical thousands. There are 3,500 performances a day in people's bathrooms, in church halls, in village, everywhere, on the street. It's an amazing event. Not this year, of course. There was nothing this year.
Wow.
And that show went from maybe 10 people on night 1 to full, and you couldn't get a ticket. It was just word of mouth. And it won prizes and all that stuff. And one of the producers of Red Dwarf, which is the TV show I've made for 32 years now in the UK, came along to see it and said, "Do you want to be in Red Dwarf?" And I went, I think I'm very busy with my own projects, like an idiot. But so my explanation, I've said to, in fact, a friend of mine works at a drama school in the UK, and I've done talks there about working in TV. And I said, basically, the way I got in was I went round the back of Showbiz to have a cigarette without anyone seeing me. I leant against the back door and they hadn't locked it, and I fell in. That's how I got into Showbiz. It really wasn't planned. It was kind of... So
But-
I did do that. So I've done a lot of comedy acting. Never done serious acting on TV and stuff. But what my passion was always engineering and science. I grew up, my brother is an engineer, a proper one, and can actually make things. And I built all my childhood, I was making little machines and model cars and, aeroplanes, all that stuff. And then, so in 98, that was when my dream job I got. So I've been doing Red Dwarf comedy show for 10 years. In 98, I got the chance to be in this show called Scrapheap Challenge, which in America was Junkyard Wars, which was 2 teams of engineers that build stuff out of trash on a junkyard. And that was just amazing because it was, the ability to be on the screen on TV, but also have a genuine, passionate interest. And so they made the most incredible machines on that show that actually had to work for 15 minutes, before they fell to bits. And that was a joy. So I did that for 10 years. And it was during that time, so we did 3 series shot in LA. We made the American version and we made the British version in LA as well. So because we could get more locations, if you're in California, we need a rocky mountain stream. Okay, it's over there. We need a desert. We'll go out that way. Where if you got a mountain, yeah, just up there. If you got a nice beach, yeah, about 100 down there. That stuff was fantastic for us. So that was great doing it in LA. And that was when I had a ride in a Prius. This is like 2000, 2001, 2002, that period. Someone gave me a ride in a Prius. I didn't know what a Prius was. We didn't have them here. I met someone from the Californian Air Resource Board. I met some engineers that went on to work in early versions of Tesla, of AC propulsion. So all those engineers were coming on the show, and I'd find out what they did. And they go, well, I'm working in battery management. And I went, what on earth is battery management? It meant nothing. I'm working on electric propulsion. What? You mean like a train? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Gradually it seeped in. It took a long time, And then I came back here and I saw a Prius and I traded in my ridiculous hot hatchback Golf, 3.5 litre Golf. Stupid thing, turbocharged. My brother had done some work on it. It was an amazing machine. And traded that in for a Prius. And I drove a Prius and went, instead of driving in a car that did 15 miles to the gallon, I drove one that did 70. And that kind of set the ball rolling. And then I started to meet people here that were working on electric vehicles. Then I heard about Tesla. Then I had to drive in a Roadster and went, this is a bit special. But it was not overnight. It was a very slow process. So then, fully charged, I pitched to the BBC. I'd worked for the BBC a lot with a great producer who'd worked at the BBC, who worked on Top Gear. And I said, I want to do a show that's not competing with Top Gear. It's different. It's about electric vehicles, renewable energy, how we make power, how we use it. And I talked to a sea of utter confused faces at the BBC. It meant nothing to them. This is in 2010, early 2010.
2010, yeah.
And they didn't know what an electric car was. They didn't know how a wind turbine was. They didn't know what solar panel. They knew nothing. So I just went, I can't be bothered. So then I thought, well, I'll shoot a pilot and see if anyone watches it, put it on YouTube, and that kind of started it, So
yeah.
So it wasn't an overnight moment. It was 10 years of going, because actually the time I went in the Prius, the week before I got given a lift in a Prius down Sunset Boulevard at 2 a.m. When we'd been after a long day's work. But the week before that, one of our sound engineers lent me his beautiful mint condition 1969 fastback Mustang.
Whoa.
Which was like the dream car for me.
Yeah.
I've never driven an American muscle car. I didn't know it. I sat in this thing and that startup sound still. I got hairs on the back of my neck. Oh my God! I've never had a car like this. As it's ticking over. It was just a legendary car. And I remember, like he said, lie down, have a look underneath. Spotless, absolutely immaculately reconditioned. Just not a gram of dirt anywhere. It was an amazing car. And he wanted me to buy it and bring it back here, which would have been. I was tempted, but I didn't do it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's how I got to know you. I remember I also been interested in engineering, right? As a kid, I used to take apart. And watching TV, I used to watch the Junkyard Wars.
Oh, right. Junkyard Wars, yeah.
Yes, because, that was an amazing show.
Oh, incredible, wasn't it? Yeah.
They would come in and they would put these, there were challenges, right? And then these groups of people would come and build stuff out of junkyard.
Yeah.
Stuff was placed strategically, right?
It was called, the engineers behind the scenes, they would say, we've seeded the junkyard.
Yeah.
That's what they call it. But they didn't like put it on a shelf with a label on. You had to go and find it.
No.
But we had to make sure they could make the thing, but they didn't make it too easy for them.
And there
But
was
we had to make
multiple
sure that-
ways of making a thing. They could get this engine, or they could get this
Yeah.
engine, or they can get a motor and batteries. It was just they would take choices, and I think that was the amazing part about that.
Yeah.
And you were the host, right? And you would be
So I didn't. So it was confusing. So I hosted all the specials. And those were amazing. So we did specials for the end of Scrapheap and Junkyard Wars, that were often 3 teams. So it would be a British team, French team, American team, or a Russian team, a German team, and an American team, whatever it would be. So I was always involved in those. And one of those was a flight. So in 2002. We did the flight special to commemorate the first flight of the Wright brothers. And we had an American team, that was American, French and British, who built aeroplanes. And we made them wear period costume. We were all in period costume, no power tools. They had hand planes. They had drills that you use like that.
Oh, wow.
And it was beautiful. And they used wood. So they made these planes out of wood and canvas and string tied together. So they made kind of replica. The French team made a plane called the Blériot Flyer, which was the first plane to fly across the channel from England to France. The American team made a plane that was based on a design of a Wisconsin bicycle maker from 1908. So he built one. So he built bicycles. So he used the same, tubes and joints like you'd have on a bike. And then the British team made a biplane. The wings looked recognisable, but the fuselage was a piece of timber with a child's canvas seat tied to it.
Oh, wow.
Insane. Just looked insane. But the wings, if you saw it, you'd reckon, oh, those are wings. That's wings, But the rest of it is going, what the hell is that? And the guy sat on that. So then when we went out in the Mojave Desert, I'm not saying that right, I'm sure, Mojave Desert, amazing. Just from this country to go to a place that is basically white and blue. That's it. There's white there and there's blue there, the sky, and that's it. And it's so hot.
So hot.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was so exciting. And there was a guy there from the FAA, Federal Aviation Authority, they'd given us permission to fly our planes to 50 feet. I think it was 50 feet.
Okay.
They would let us do that because it was really unsafe. I mean, they weren't proper airplanes. And so the first one went off, the French one, and it hit a bump and it bounced into the air and then landed. And that was it. That was as far as it ever got. So it basically bounced higher than a car would, but not much. And going incredibly fast. It was doing like 90 miles an hour,
Wow.
It did that, but it didn't really fly. The American one just about got off the ground for long enough for us to get footage. There was a pickup truck alongside with cameras on it, driving like crazy across, and they went, and then it landed again. And then the British one, he just started moving off just to test if it was balanced. That's what he told us. So we weren't quite ready for it. The bloody thing went up in the air, which no one expected. I mean, seriously up in the air. And I was standing next to the guy from the FAA at the time. Really nice dude, but for us, a proper sort of quietly spoken Clint Eastwood type, big cap. And he just, spoke really deep and said, you can only go 50 feet in the air. That's the permission. If you go higher than that, I'm going to bust your ass. All that stuff. This plane went up and up and up. So we had a tracker plane that films natural history stuff. So films geese flying along. It can fly very slow. It's like a big glider. Very quiet, very slow, with huge gimbal camera underneath. So they kind of ran in, got in that, took off. That's the only communication we had with them. So we said, can you tell him to come down? And I love that very dry kind of NASA, never get panicked American sort of vocal range. It was like, we're at 10, what was he saying? We're at 2,000 feet and we are gesticulating for him to go downward. He is just waving at us. this British guy, and we went to go to 50 feet. He got up to 2,800 feet. No parachute, no safety stuff. Sitting on a child's deck chair tied onto a piece of wood with string.
Wow.
Crazy. But I mean, what an amazing, those experiences were just, absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah, engineering, it's an amazing thing. There's a time, I always like to tell people, there's a time before you can make stuff, and then a time after.
Yeah.
That's a defining time in your life, It's like, and if it happens early in life, then you're in a good place. You know, if
Yeah.
it happens later in life, then you got to catch up.
Yeah. And I think that is, in a way, I think what Scrapheap did, which was really great about it, or Junkyard was it reminded people that we all use stuff that's made, which we take for granted. You know, there's another long-running series I did here called How Do They Do It? Which was basically how stuff is made. So I was going around factories or manufacturing plants, but even like recycling locations and all kinds of stuff, you know, and oil refineries. Ooh. That was a key moment. You spend 2 days filming in an oil refinery. Amazing engineers that run oil refineries. They were incredible. But, you know, the amount of energy, the amount of power that an oil refinery reuses is never mentioned on Top Gear when they say how fast this car goes. Yeah. That fuel that's in there has used a lot of energy before it gets put in your tank. You know, there's a
lot of cobalt too, right?
A lot of cobalt to remove sulfur. Yeah. Which who knew? I had no idea.
Yes, I mean I know because I've seen your stuff. So I was like, what?
No, that made me when someone told me that, and I went, no, you're kidding. You're like, no, the majority of cobalt is used in oil refining around the world. Because I mean, a battery. The cobalt in a battery is not like half of it. It's tiny proportion.
Minuscule. Yeah, it's a tiny bit.
Yeah, same as lithium, isn't it, in that sense? But
lithium. And also, some people their views are so skewed to, like, their lithium mining is so environmentally unfriendly. And I'm like, what are they doing? They just pick it up from the ground. It's just, it's like salt.
Get it out the sea. I mean, it's in the sea, isn't it?
They just wait for the water to, like, it's not... Yeah. It's not as bad as they say it is.
Yeah. Well, also, because I've said that, and it does stop the conversation. I've said, no, you're right. Because, I mean, extracting oil historically has caused no problems.
Yes. Transporting it. Just transporting it alone.
If you drill lots of oil wells in the Arctic Circle, it makes it better. There is an amazing story. Have you heard this? Is unbelievable. I don't know which oil company it is, have worked out a way of refreezing the thawing permafrost so that their drilling rigs don't sink into the mud.
Oh,
so they're refreezing the ground they've unfrozen so that they can carry on drilling. I just think that is insane. And imagine the energy use to refreeze. You know, I don't know how you do it. You're running heat pumps that extract the heat from the rock and from the mud, and because you know when that thaws, which is what we're hearing a lot of that. What's happening? It's happening in Siberia, so all along that northern European and Russian area, the permafrost is melting, and buildings are sinking into it because it's been frozen since we don't even know when. You know,
beginning of time. Yeah, as far modern time, beginning of modern time. Yeah, and they're probably using a ton of electricity to do that.
Of course they are. Yeah, I mean that was the thing about that really got me. I thought this is something weird about this, and this would be 2009. I think I filmed that show in the refinery. Was when I arrived there. We got out in the car park, and I was there meeting the camera crew, and I saw this really big. We call them a substation. Where all the pylons come, and there's big transformers and loads of wires behind a big fence. High secure area. And I looked at it and went, oh, that's amazing. I didn't know they generated electricity at refineries. That's the way my brain worked. I thought they were sending power out. That power was coming in, baby. Yeah. They use the head engineer explained to me they used the same amount of electricity at that refinery, which was huge. I mean, the scale of it is very big. They use the same amount of electricity in a year as the 2 cities in the UK, Coventry and Leicester. And those cities are 1.5 million people. I mean, quite big towns. Whoa. You know, so that's how much power that one refinery uses to produce. But they produce all the aviation fuel that we use in the UK. So every time a plane is filled with aviation fuel, it's from that one refinery. So they produce a lot of stuff. It's not like they don't produce anything, but it uses a lot of power.
So it's weird. People don't understand that it's double the carbon footprint, right? Because you're burning stuff, you're creating carbon emissions to create the electricity. Right? So the electricity in a lot of places is quite dirty.
Coal. Coal or gas,
But then you're using that electricity to refine more fossil fuels, which then are going to create more carbon emissions, right?
And I mean, it is those things like my brother's mechanical engineer, built engines and worked for Formula One teams in his youth and built gearboxes and things, really understands the internal combustion engine in a way that, you know, only someone that he could build one out of metal, you know, take him a long time, but he could do it. And he knows that they're at best, absolute best, they're about 30% efficient, a super efficient, ultra efficient internal combustion. And most of the cars that people are 20 to 25% efficient. And you go, wait a minute, so that means, so I put $1 in my tank and 25 cents moves me along the road. The rest is wasted. There's heat. And then you go, that is a crazy use of the energy, regardless of the impact or carbon or anything else. It's just an inefficient machine. That's really when I understood that, I went, that is crazy. And then you find out the electric motor, the worst electric motor you could get is 80% efficient.
Yeah.
And modern ones are way more than that, 85, 90, 95. You know, I mean, it's...
Yeah.
You're getting losses. I mean, you're sure getting losses on the cable to go into the car and through the battery and the inverters and all that. But it doesn't mount up to 75% of the energy you're putting in is wasted.
Yes, no. Yeah. And, you know, it's only going to get better, right? Like electric cars are the worst that they will ever be at this point. They will only keep getting better from now. Yeah. Combustion engines have been around for 100 years.
Long time. They've been refined.
I think they've hit a wall. Whether it's because they want to or because they just can't, because just what their technologies, you know.
And I think now there isn't the kind of financial or in a sense emotional motivation for the manufacturers to make the next generation of internal combustion. There isn't a next generation. They've done it. And they're amazing. And I mean, I'm old enough to remember common cars in the 1960s. I remember what they did. They broke down all the time. They were always going wrong. They were incredibly unreliable. The cars rusted to hell in 2 years. They fell to bits in 3. You know, that they were bad, and that has improved immeasurably. I mean, modern combustion cars incredibly reliable, last a hell of a long time. So they have really, really improved in the last 40 or 50 years. Amazing.
Yeah.
But they've kind of reached a peak now, whereas we are absolutely, as you say, absolutely the beginning of electric vehicles, of batteries, of battery capacity, energy density, software. I've just been with a company that are developing vehicle-to-grid software and hardware that is so clever and so next generation. And, you know, that I think is the big thing that I've got to hand it to them, because I'm quite critical of our current government in the UK, but their commitment to wind power, their commitment to electric vehicles and to grid infrastructure is unquestionable. They really are pushing that agenda hard. So there are amazing projects here where they're, lots and lots of people in one area of the country will have electric cars, vehicle to grid, and the grid are buying electricity from those cars at peak times and then charging them off peak. So we have amazing variations in our electricity tariffs if you have an electric car. I mean, my electricity is so cheap at night and really, really badly expensive in the day. I do not want to boil a kettle if my batteries aren't full at like 4 or 5 in the evening. That's when the price of my electricity goes way higher than normal. But then at night it goes way low or negative. So I can be paid to charge a car or charge my batteries at night, which is crazy because we have so much offshore wind. That is really having an impact, and that if it's a windy night and there's not the demand, you know.
That's very interesting because we have a similar problem here in California. We have a surplus of solar energy during the day.
Yes, in the day. Yes, we don't ever have that in the day. So we don't have a surplus of solar in this country.
But we never see during the day there's a peak time. Sometimes the peak times matches where there's a surplus of energy. So we're like, what is happening here?
But then I mean, it's the same. So I know Australia better than the United States in those terms, that like the adoption of solar in Australia is remarkable. It's probably above California, and California is very high. But and that is because their peak demand is the middle of the day. So air conditioning, you know, when it's hot, and it's hot in Australia, particularly Queensland, where my wife's from, is subtropical. So it's nice and warm and sticky. And there's so much solar there because what an individual household does, they don't need batteries or anything. They're going, when's the aircon on? Middle of the day, mate, is when it's going and going like mad. Well, that's when your peak solar is. So you put solar on your house and you cut your power bill. And it's really affected the grid in Australia. It's affected the power generators because you imagine the demand 20 years ago, middle of the day, all the coal plants going like crazy, the demand's dropped through the floor, you know. So it does. So I think the energy disruption is a good description because it messes. It was working before. It may not have been good. It may have been dirty, but there was a system that had kind of evolved, and now that's gone wrong. And it's that adaptation and that transition can be very painful and difficult, and stuff goes wrong, and some things will work and some won't. But clearly, solar. You know, we do have a lot of solar here now, and that's when our negative price happens on us if it's a sunny, windy day, because we have so much offshore wind. And we're tripling it. I mean, it's a huge industry here, and it's kind of hidden from the general public because it's offshore. We can't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain beaches and coastlines where the horizon is just a forest of wind turbines, as far as you can see.
Wow.
They are huge. So they're now putting in offshore wind turbines now that are unimaginably enormous. So they've put one. We're filming it soon, but they've put one on the dockside in Rotterdam. And it is currently the biggest wind turbine in the world.
Wow!
And it's just so huge, and you don't see these. And so, you know, like that. There's a valley outside
California.
LA, in California, where there's lots of little ones in a valley, quite low, or they were. I don't know if they're still there, but there was hundreds of small wind turbines. Well, those are between. I think they're like 150 or 200 kilowatts. Those early turbines. Now, your big, tall ones you have on a mountain now. On land, up to 2 megawatts. I mean, that's bloody huge. These ones out at sea, the latest one, they bring 12 megawatts each one.
Wow!
And it's they love the facts. The people who make them, the blades that in each individual blade that turns around is 107 meters long. So that is 300
meters,
330 feet, 340 feet.
300 feet.
Yeah, 300 plus feet.
That's a scale hard to comprehend.
It's very hard. So if a lot of your viewers and listeners will know the kind of image of a London bus, you can drive a London bus into the neck of that wind turbine. That's how big the circumference is. They are major industrial things. So 12 megawatts, one rotation of one blade, if it does one circuit, generates enough power for 2 houses for 48 hours. That's one of their statistics. Just so one crazy. Turn. So, and I mean, the reason it took me a while to work out, because it's got to be so difficult to make them that big, but the reason that they are pushing the scale is because they don't stop working. So when you're out at sea in your sailing boat and you can barely move and it's still and calm, they're still going because they cover such a vast area that there's always some air movement. So
the efficiency goes up.
So off the scale, yeah. And they can also deal with higher winds, which we have mainly. What affects our wind turbines is high winds, not low winds. But they can operate in high winds. They turn the blades so that they don't spin out of control. But they're just massive. So there's a building in London that's called the Shard, which is this crazy sort of. I know there's one in San Francisco, like a very sharp pyramid. The biggest wind turbines, and this is huge building. You see this building from 50 miles away. You know, for the UK it's tall. For New York it's a squat little thing. But it is a very tall building for us. And the biggest wind turbines are just short. When the blade's at the top, it's just short of this building. When you tell people in the UK that, they go, they cannot imagine it because they are massive things. They can't make those blades.
We're talking inland. About like a 50-story building or something,
yes,
right?
They're the height of a 50-story building. Yeah.
Yes.
Terrifying. The towers themselves, because they're in the sea, they're like 300 feet. So they are like 900 feet, the actual tower is. But some of it's underwater. But what's above water is big. You can't really, because it's in the sea. If you're at a distance, I've flown around them in helicopters. They don't look that big because they're just things down there. And then you go, oh, because then you see a boat. And you go, that's not a boat, that's a ship. And it looks tiny.
Wow.
And that's one of the maintenance vessels that goes up next to it. And that's a big ship.
Wow.
You know,
I didn't know this. I have never seen that mass scale.
Yeah, no, they are amazing. So if you fly to Norway from here and you look down and it's a clear day, not very often, you go, oh my God, look at that. So you see blue sea and then millions of little white dots. And that is not millions, but hundreds and hundreds, which is wind turbines on a big wind farm. They also have substations. So you know when you get that image of an oil rig in a massive big structure in the sea. They've now used that engineering skill to build substations, because although they build a substation out at sea with accommodation for engineers, with everything, helicopter pads on the top, really big, massive structure. And that's the substation. And they'll have so all the wires from all the wind turbines will be gathered there. Then there's one big fat wire going inland.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? The transmission.
Yeah.
Because if you're generating...
One of the advantages of subsea transmission is it's cooler. Because obviously...
Because of the
pushing
sea.
that much power through a wire, it gets warm. If it's on land, it's you've got heat problems. But underwater, it's just basically maybe we're heating. Maybe that's where global
the naysayers will say
just,
that. Yeah,
we're heating.
You're heating the ocean. You're part of the problem.
And we're stopping the wind blowing and all that stuff. Yeah. But anyway, no, that is. I mean, so we the government have recently made a commitment that we produce.
Wow.
We have 40 gigawatts of wind installed by whenever 2030 or something. And our average daily consumption is about 22 to 30 gigawatts at any one moment. So if we've got 40 gigawatts of wind, the whole idea is you produce more than you can possibly consume, but you store it. And that's where the vehicle to... So we've gone... Sorry, it's gone big circle, but vehicle to grid, the notion of that, whether it's going to work or not, but, if you have 2 million electric vehicles that are plugged in and you take 1 kilowatt hour from each of them,
that's a lot of battery. That's a lot of energy.
It's a lot of juice. It's about 5 power stations worth, and you've got it like that. You've got it in an instant, because
it's a distributed power plant.
Yeah, and it's distributed across so you don't need to rebuild the grid. It's spread out.
There, and it's closer to the source. That's the beauty of that. Yeah. It's that there's no transmission. Yeah, because your power source is literally in your garage. It's right there, like feet away from where you want it.
Is that? You probably understood this. It took me a long time to understand that. But when it's a sunny day here, and my batteries are full, and I've charged the cars, and there's electricity going out, I always assume it goes to London or it goes to Bristol. It goes long, and then someone said, no, it's Mrs. Newman over the road when she has her tumble dryer on. It's going there. The electron will go find it to the shortest route. Yeah. And I went, and then so every time I see Mrs. Newman now, sadly she's moved out because she was one of our lovely neighbours. I would go, and I said to her, when you're doing cooking, your electricity is coming from me. And she was so upset. She's a very old lady. She's going, oh dear, do you mind? I said, no, it's good. You're all right.
Yeah. That it goes to the path of least resistance. That's how the grid tie inverters work, right? I set up a little system, right? I don't own my own home here in California, so I can't install a big giant system. And it's weird because I am, preaching the renewable energy, the DIY Powerwalls, and I can't install one in my place because I don't have a place. So... But I did a road system.
I didn't realize that was the case.
I'm like, I'm just not ready to buy a house yet. But the day I buy a house, believe it or not,
it's going to be covered in batteries.
Yes, it's going to be one giant, 1 megawatt hour, full of solar panels everywhere. Yeah. But I did set up like a little rogue system, and it's so small. I keep telling people, and the video it's getting a lot of views, hundreds of thousands of views, right? I built a tiny system with $1,500.
Right.
And just used a cheap inverter from Amazon. And my return of investment, because of the time of use, right? Yeah. When the sun's out, that's when the energy is more expensive. It paid itself in 2 years.
Wow.
So my return on investment now is just making money.
That is, because that's where I first came across you was when I saw, I think it's that thing that is the wonders of the serendipity of the internet and of YouTube and all that. I don't know what I was looking for or what I'd been watching, but it just said DIY Powerwall. I went, oh, what's that? Or something like, and it was you with a load of buttons. And I was going, oh my God, that is brilliant. I just loved it. But I also knew that this is a thing I learned from working on Scrapheap was before then, like in my 20s, I completely rebuilt my car, engine, gearbox, clutch. It was knackered, it was broken, everything was... And it took me ages, and I had advice from people, but I could do it. Technically, I could do it. I took the motor out and took the gearbox out. It was really painful. It fell on my head when I was underneath. All that, I made all the mistakes, but I did do it. And at that moment, when I got back in that car and went, and it started, and I drove it, was, it's an achievement in your life. Yeah. And then I did Scrapheap for years, and I went, I am utterly rubbish. I can't do anything. It completely removed my confidence because I was seeing these amazing engineers that could get 2 bits of an old bed and a piece of dustbin or trash can or something, and they'd make a steering assembly out of it. And I go, I can't do that. So I'm now hopeless. I can't. So when I was watching you doing that, I was going, I'm never going to be able to put a load of batteries in a box and wire. I don't know how to wire shit up. It's just, I can't.
Yeah. There's really a lot of people, and a lot of people are doing it. It's all amazing. I'm amazed every day because now I'm making a living off of it.
Yeah.
And quite a good one, actually, at that. From people making their own batteries.
Yes.
And, for the longest time, here in America, we were like, we're a society of consumers, not really makers anymore, right? We send everything offshore, to China.
Yeah.
But it's coming back, I think, right?
I think so. I think it will.
And I see it every day because when I make a video and I get commissions off of like the stuff that I promote, it's like, oh, here's this inverter, here's this battery or whatever. Right. I see the sales come through and I'm like, who are these people? Who's making all this? There's a sea of people out there.
Yeah.
That are.
Well, I mean, that was, I think, the 2 things that when I first started making fully charged, but even thinking about electric cars, the 2 things I never saw coming, I couldn't ever, would never have crossed my mind. Electric flight. So on Monday, I'm going to go and see a couple of electric planes, and then we're talking a longer haul now, 500-mile range, hydrogen fuel cell and batteries. Amazing, but just amazing developments in that. I never imagined that there would be things that flew that were electric, and that was one. And the other one was what you do and what so many people are doing now, which is getting old and classic cars and converting them to electric and and doing them. So there's a few people in this country, I'm sure, well, you'll know about them, but who used to do sort of refurbishing classic cars with combustion engines, and they'd make them perfect and exquisite, and they do all the detailing and all that. Now they're doing electric ones, but beautifully. It's not like, I suppose if I had the time, I could almost, with a lot of help, do an electric conversion, but it would look like it wouldn't look smart. And I just drove an electric Ferrari last week, which will be an episode coming soon.
Yeah.
And the conversion is exquisitely done. There's not one bit of wobbly metal or a bit of wire hanging. It's just beautifully converted, and it goes like stink, of course. It's ridiculously fast.
Yeah, that's...
A ludicrous Tesla engine in it, so it's not
there you
slow.
go. Yeah, that's what we're doing now. We're putting Tesla engines, motors on all kinds of cars now, and it's.
But I couldn't see that coming when 10 years ago that people would be doing that. It's just.
Yeah, it's just. I think what people don't understand is that we're so wasteful.
Yes.
As a society, right? And we're getting all these batteries. The 18650 was.
Yeah.
It's been around for 25 years.
Yes, it's not new, is it? No,
it's not new. And for years, for decades, we were grabbing all these dead batteries or dead battery packs, but with a lot of good cells in there still. Yeah. And we were throwing them in containers, shipping them right to China.
Yeah.
And then in China, manufacturing industry over there, they would take them, they would refurbish them, repackage them, send them right back to us.
Yes.
And we would buy it again, reuse it, and then we would send it again to them. And then that happened several times, several cycles on a lot of this technology, until eventually they would break it down into the raw parts, and they would use the raw components, redo them again, make a new product, batteries, send it right back to us.
Sell them back. Isn't that crazy? Because that is, I think, and also that is a critical argument that a lot of, it's not there's so much naysayers, just people who don't know, not even, no hostility. They're going, well, I'm really worried about what happens to the batteries when you have to throw them away. And they will say it in that term because that's what they've been told. And I go, you're not going to throw them away.
They're valuable.
We went to one of our, Helen, who does presenting for us, Helen Chersky, went to a battery recycling plant in Germany, which is basically waiting for the big, because they're not wearing out. That's the one thing we know. They don't wear out as soon as everybody said, so they're still being used. But they are and they're 94% of the materials in a battery pack. The whole pack, not just the battery, not just the cells, the whole pack. They are recycling. And they're very German. We are not satisfied with that. That is not good enough. We want to be 96.
Oh.
It's only 94%. You go, 94 is pretty good.
Yeah.
No, it's not good enough.
Yeah, you know what happened? That Prius that you drove first.
Yeah.
That is the culprit right there. That's the reason why people think that batteries will not last long. Because that car had a tiny battery.
Yeah, it was minute, wasn't it? Really?
And they used to ride it really hard.
Yeah.
So it had to do a lot of work for its size, and so it would wear out after a few years. And because it was so new technology, it was thousands of dollars to replace that tiny battery. And so people are going, wait a minute, every 4 years I have to replace a battery?
I have to replace it. Yeah.
Oh, this is a joke. This technology is never going to work.
Yeah.
But that is not how batteries work, right? If you don't abuse them, like I'll give you an example. My car here, I converted 8 years ago, and that battery was like already 2, 3, 4 years old at that time.
Right.
So we're looking at almost like a 15-year-old battery here.
Yeah.
And I'm still getting like 90% of the capacity. Yeah. And I probably will have that battery in that car for the next 10 years. Right? So lithium batteries do not run out. Or they're not, the degradation is not.
Yeah. And what is very obvious is the next generation of batteries, like the stuff that Tesla announced fairly recently, is...
Yes.
Because I thought that was there was all this sort of gossip about it's going to be a 1,000,000-mile battery, like it was amazing. And there's actually, I don't know if you've seen it, there's a report come out recently where a battery chemist we know in this country and a few other people have analysed what they're doing and gone, it's actually 2 million miles.
Oh,
so it's
really?
a 2 million mile battery, not a 1 million mile battery. And they're whatever it is, because it's such a subtle difference. It's not just we're using completely new material or it's now made like this or we do this. It's basically the same thing, just refined a bit with different structure of it, the way it's slightly bigger cell form, isn't it? But
they're redoing the manufacturing process. So this is an advancement in manufacturing process of batteries. Not quite so much on the battery. Well, they do in the dry electric cathode or electrode or whatever.
But it's more about the manufacturing. I think you're right. Yeah, and the speed and therefore the economy of it. If you can churn them out by the million. Yeah.
And the cars, now there's a lot of wasted space in the battery pack.
Right.
Separating into these different modules and stuff.
Yeah.
Because he thought, because the early cars, there's a couple of them that did catch fire.
Yeah.
So they were working all that stuff out. And so in order to keep that safe, they needed to separate them into their own modules, into their own sections of a. But
so you didn't get the whole thing burn it. But yeah, it has changed, doesn't it? Yeah.
But he basically said, like, we did that supposedly to work on batteries, right? To service them. But there's no servicing. They're not servicing battery packs. They don't go bad. They either they last a long time or they all go bad at the same time. You're not servicing that pack. And so making modules was not a thing that they need to do anymore. And so apparently they're not doing it anymore.
Because that's what I think. It's all the unforeseen problems. Is that because I'm become very obsessed recently because we have now so many electric. I think we've got far more. I would think in Europe of different brands electric cars available than in the USA, I mean, there's so many now. I mean, I've got a Peugeot out, there's 2, 3 Peugeots, there's Audi are bringing out 22 different electric models in the next year. I mean, it really is across the board, and they're doing really cool little sports car, which I was going to go and see this week, and I couldn't go. But anyway, we'll see it eventually. But the price differential, so when they're now bringing, a lot of people are doing this, so Mazda are doing it, there's quite a few different manufacturers. They'll bring out a new car, new design of a make they do. And there's a petrol version, there's a diesel version, and there's an electric version. A lot of them are now cutting out hybrids and plug-in hybrids. They're not bothering. And they go, this is the petrol version, 20,000 euros, say 25,000 euros. This is the diesel one, 20,000. This is the electric one, 32,000. And you go, so this is the same car made in the same factory. Everything is the same. In the body, the shell, the interior, the steering wheels, the brakes. It's just and it's designed so that they can hold a battery pack in the floor, and you replace the engine with the battery management system and all that stuff. And the motor and all that. It's not anything that wonderful, but it's 10,000 plus euros more than the petrol one. And you go, well, and they say it's because of the battery cost. And you go, really? Because and I know that the cost of a battery in 2010, yes, massive, really high. Cost of a battery in 2020, it's dropped by how many percent? I don't even know. It's hundreds of percent drop, isn't it? I mean, it's really got cheaper.
It's cheap. It's cheaper. Yeah.
So where are their batteries from? So then you think, okay, you're a big manufacturer and you sell hundreds of petrol cars every day and hundreds of diesel cars. And then there's this new thing that you've got to have. You've got to be selling them, otherwise you're going to go out of business and you won't be able to drive them in Paris, Amsterdam, Berlin, London, all the cities, Madrid, they're going to ban combustion cars in the next couple of years. You will not be able to drive them in there.
Wow.
So they have to make electric ones, but they've still got to sell loads of petrol ones because they employ loads of people. They've got the manufacturing stuff there to make them. So what are you going to do? So how do you gently dissuade people from buying electric cars yet? You know they're going to have to. You know you're going to lose. You know you're going to stop making combustion cars, but they're trying to delay. And so the easy way for them to do it is go, oh, well, because of the batteries, it's £10,000 more.
Yeah.
There's no justification for it anymore.
Yeah.
And the real lie of this is going to be revealed by the Chinese. So the Chinese, there's hundreds of startups that we've never heard of in China making electric cars. They never make combustion cars. They just make electric ones. And they're £4,000. They're the equivalent of $4,000. You can buy a new electric car with 4 seats. You probably wouldn't want to, but you can. And between sort of £6,000 and £12,000, so maybe $10,000 to $15,000, really nice electric cars, really good in that price range. I mean, as good as anything you'd get in Europe.
Yeah,
because they know how much. They're not bothering about combustion cars. They never made them. Yeah, they don't have that legacy, and that's really.
They don't have that relationship with the oil industry either.
No,
because
not at all. Nothing there.
That's a conflict of interest, right? You can't move on to the next thing without bringing your partners, because this is a 100-year-old partnership with the oil industry.
It's going back a long time, and the tire companies and all that. The history of all that is amazing, isn't it? I mean, that. Yeah. The first time I came to LA in the 80s, I stayed with a lovely family in Echo Park. Who I knew from, I'd met them, they lived over here, an American couple with their kid, and they had a really cool bike, a push bike. So I rode a push bike around, a pedal bike, all over Los Angeles, which was, I didn't realize at the time, was not a common thing to do then, in the late 1980s. Yeah. It's just that thing when you're riding along, like I've done all over the world, cycling along, and you hear tires screeching, which is someone who's just driving along there. Oh my God! It's like they've seen someone on a horse. I don't know what they thought. I was very well treated. I didn't get abused. But one of the things I noticed, I crossed, I think it was Sunset Boulevard. I can't remember what I was doing. I wanted to go up that way. I didn't know, I was a novice to the whole thing. And there was rail lines down the middle of the road, but it had flower pots on them. But you could see rail tracks, and you went, oh my God, it's trams. And that was the tram system in Los Angeles. I then looked at it, got obsessed with it, looked it up. Of course, that was the red car trams. I mean, the whole history of it. But the way that disappeared, that's the automotive industry, 100%. The tire industry and the automotive. It wasn't really the oil industry. It was the tire industry. And they wanted to sell buses. They weren't replacing it with cars so much. They wanted to sell buses. So they bought the tram network, which was profitable, popular, clean, electric, amazing. You see it in the old movies. You see the trams in the old silent films, don't you? They bought it up, and it was so savage. They bought it, and the day they finished the sale, they drove all the trams to one end of the track and set fire to them, burnt them all instantly. So there were no trams. And then they sold buses that were petrol, inefficient, broke down all the time, needed tyres replacing all the time because the tyres wear out, so the tyre companies made money. Yeah. That bit of history in America, you go, that is so savage. Because where the cities with trams, it's a tourist attraction. San Francisco, where they managed to hold on to them. Yeah, but LA had this. If you see the map, I've seen it in Los Angeles. The map of the tram network, it's amazing.
I didn't know this part of the history. I was
all over the city.
I recently went to San Francisco, and I was amazed because they have all these, and I'm like, wait a minute. They figured out, the cables are ugly or whatever in the top, but they figure out how to move electric
trams. That was over 100 years old. Yeah.
I'm like, why isn't every other city have this? I'm like, what's going on?
That happened all because we had them here. We had them in the UK. A lot of cities had them, and they're now tearing the cities up. And the streets are wrecked because they're putting trams back, and it takes years and it costs millions. But they all used to have. You can see photographs of towns like Nottingham and Birmingham and Manchester and Edinburgh had trams. London had trams. They all did.
Wow, I didn't know that part of that history. I didn't know that in LA.
There is a book. Oh, is it here? No, because I'm just because I use it a lot. I quote from it a lot. There's an amazing American writer called Fred Pierce. No, that's that one. No, I'm trying to remember his name. it could be Conrad Black, and it's called Internal Combustion. And it's basically just the history of the internal combustion engine. So a lot of references to the oil industry. But then you see the early car makers were kind of slightly crooked. I mean, not crooked, but they were definitely pretty malicious. They were and determined. And, how Ford started manufacturing. The most benign attitude he had to his workers, to the way you make things, to looking after people, and how that gradually went... It's kind of gradually turned, no, they're just workers, let's get rid of them all. And, it's a fascinating history because it didn't start out as a cruel corporation. It started out as this amazing sort of social experiment to really treat people well, so they've got somewhere good to live, a decent job and good food, and, very, very benign approach to manufacturing, and this amazing manufacturing system where, you produce all these cars. And his whole aim was to produce cars that the working man could afford, not just for rich people, which they were at the time.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating book. But he tells the story of all the trams, and that happened all over the world, all over the USA.
Yeah.
And it's very much about the USA because you were the first country that really did cars big time. I mean, we had cars here, but it took a long time to catch up with the Americans, and also the electric cars in the early part of the last century. So there's a key moment he describes, which is when the first petrol taxi cab in New York was introduced, which was about 1906, somewhere like that. And it was an experiment to see if it was acceptable. And it was on for one day, and then the authorities said, no, it's too dangerous because it upset the horses, because it was backfiring. Yeah. They thought it was going to catch fire. The gas tank was an upturned glass bottle, like you have in a drink, a water dispenser. It was the same thing, with the bubbles.
Wow.
And that was held on behind where the passenger sat with a leather strap. That's how safe it was.
Yeah.
Kept breaking down. And at the time, there were 618 electric taxi cabs in Manhattan that were really popular. They had a street charging network, so you could plug them in on the street. They had battery swapping stations on 125th Street and Soho, to either end of New York. So you drive in, two guys would pull out a wooden box, lead acid batteries, slide in a new one, off you go. Took a few seconds.
Wow.
That was in 1904.
Yeah.
And there are photographs of, here's another genius. They had some genius ideas. The charger, I think, went in the back, and it was like a plate with two copper connectors on a plate. So you'd slide that plate in with a cloth-covered wire.
Yeah, cloth.
How dangerous it was. You imagine.
Yeah.
But then the thing is, you could then push your car into the back of the other taxi, and at the front you had a copper plate with two connectors that clunked into their plate at the back, their socket at the back. The male and female, you could call it. So one taxi would slide into the other. Then it would charge. You could charge like 10 taxis at a time from one charge point. I mean, it was over lunch. Just a genius idea. It was really clever stuff they did there. But they all went. Yeah.
So is Edwin Black? That was.
I've got to look at. So I've got the book. The books. Normally it's on my shelves here, but it's
Internal Combustion: How Corporations and Governments Dictated.
Yes,
that's it. Addicted the world to oil and derailed the alternatives by Edwin Black.
Yeah, interesting book. It's not new. It's been out a few years, but very interesting. His early history of how, and there was so much kind of corruption, and in a way, it's very like we're seeing now. There are hundreds of companies starting up, and we're going to make the best electric car that's ever. It'll have a range of 1,000 miles on one charge, and this is like in 1980 again. Starting to hear that again.
Yeah.
We are going to make the fastest electric truck ever. Really? Let's wait and see. But out of that came some real stuff. But it's so hard to filter out.
Some of there's a good truck coming out, right? The Rivian. I put a reservation on that one.
When I saw that, because that's when I was really depressed when I was ill. When I touched the Rivian that was at Fully Charged Life.
You guys had it there.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing cars. They look like they're real. They're talking to the engineers. They're real batteries, real motors, technology. They're not banking on any magical thing.
I don't know if you've seen it there. So there's two. So Ewan McGregor. Have you heard about Ewan McGregor? This guy we know. So Ewan and Charlie, they drove from Tierra del Fuego to LA on electric bikes, on Harley Davidson's live wires. But their backup vehicles were 2 Rivians, the first 2 ever. And when you see, I've watched a few of those episodes, when you see what those trucks had to do, it's like, okay, that's pretty...
I'm currently watching that, Yeah,
it's great, isn't it? But for a prototype truck to take the beating and distance that did, it was,
You know what's the amazing thing is I had a Michael Bream from EV West last week in the podcast. And he goes, I have a little surprise for you, a little surprise guest. And I go, okay, whatever. He might come in at the middle of the podcast. He goes, okay, and I didn't ask. I was like, okay, let's start our podcast. So then in the middle of the podcast, I start talking because Bream was in that show.
Yes,
he was, it was right. They went to ask him and stuff.
Well, and he's doing Ewan's car, isn't he, and all that stuff.
And so then I start talking about the show, and then he goes, let me look at my phone. He goes, he says Ewan says he can't come in. He was supposed to. He was gonna.
Come in and say hi.
He was gonna say hi. He was gonna be the surprise guest, and I go, that sucks, But he was scheduled. Apparently, he's shooting something in New York, and he couldn't.
Right.
Something came up last minute or something, right? So, but he said that maybe in the future he'll come and do a podcast. So I'm like, that would be great because that guy is 100% BW nut like me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And now he's driving an electric BW. And now, he's riding his motorcycle. And you had Charlie.
Yeah, so Charlie is now doing he's about to film a review of a motorbike for an electric bike with Andy. So the two of them, they're going to ride 2 different bikes. And I don't know, they've got some stunts lined up. It sounds terrifying because I'm kind of scared of motorbikes.
Yeah.
I like pedal bikes very much, but I'm just they just make me frightened. And I guess because I've known a lot of my friends when I was young, rode motorbikes, and then none of them died, but a lot of them ended up, my brother being a very good example, ended up in hospital for a long time, really, So I've always been a bit nervous of them. But,
motorbikes in cities don't
it's a difficult mixture,
well.
Yeah. And motorbikes and rain. That makes me nervous.
The open road is different, right? The open road, it's fine. I think you'll... I mean, it's dangerous. When you see the adventures that they had down in South America. It's pretty scary at times.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, really challenging. I mean, and that, I thought that was what an amazing advert for both Harley and Rivian. I mean, it was an amazing, you can understand why they were keen to do it. The bikes seemed to be, the bikes didn't go wrong, did they? I mean, they were really tough, and that was a tough ride.
It's so remote down there. It's so crazy.
And also, I mean, because I don't know if they kept going to places that you went, oh my God, look at that! Amazing lake and mountain. I'd never heard of it. I'd not even heard of it. I didn't know. That's in Bolivia? Is that like that? Look at those mountains. They're huge. It's amazing.
It's a whole continent that we know nothing about. It's an amazing continent.
Yeah,
with some of the best wilderness, like
stunning.
Where are they starting? Patagonia.
Right down in the bottom, So I'd sort of heard of that Tierra del Fuego. So the weird thing is down in that area. So my old family, all 3 of my grandparents and most of my great grandparents were Welsh from Wales. Hence my name is a Welsh name. And there's this huge population of Welsh people in Patagonia, right down in the south. And they went out there hundreds of years ago. They still speak Welsh, which is a tiny language. Only a few thousand people speak Welsh. I think a lot of Welsh people get angry with me because probably a couple of million can speak Welsh, but it's not it's a small language. And there's nowhere in the world. So it's in Wales or Patagonia. That's where you can hear Welsh. It's so weird. And they've been there 150 years. It's not a recent thing. I don't know why they're there. It's sheep farming. I think I don't know. But that is so strange. So I'd heard of Patagonia because I think I probably have very distant relatives. I've never met them who live there.
It's amazing. I've always been amazed at the fact that as Americans we don't know anything about down there, and it's a whole continent.
That's crazy because you could drive there. You don't even have to fly. You could drive. It's quite a long way. Yeah.
It would be challenging because there's Central America, right?
That's quite difficult.
And that's difficult. Yeah, there's a lot of it's people are scared all the time. In fact, there's a portion that you'd have to go through ship. I guess
Yeah.
there's a portion that is just so the jungle is so
It's just so dangerous.
virgin, that there's no roads or whatever,
Yeah.
like
Which is crazy, isn't it? I mean, it's good that that's still there to this day. The one country, so I a couple of times met this woman, Monica Araya, who is, I'm sure I'm not saying that right, who's Costa Rican. And the stuff she's told me about Costa Rica, one day, it's on my bucket list. I've got to get to Costa Rica. Costa Rica is 100% renewably powered. They're getting a lot of second-hand electric vehicles, cheap electric vehicles. They're doing electric buses, all that stuff. And they've got no oil. And I think this is such a good example. They've never had oil. There's no oil there. So and their jungle is really dense and they grow all food. It's beautiful. And it's very politically stable. They don't have, all that stuff. And next door, Venezuela, loads of oil, massive corruption, hugely defunct government, loads of poverty and, And she said,
crazy?
She said, that when you see people trying to cross the border into America, and I went, yeah. And she said, none of them are Costa Rican. We don't want to go to America.
Yes,
because their home is
paradise.
Which kind of says, and I think that's a side of the oil industry as well that I think we can be rightly critical of. Because I try to be balanced about the oil industry because it's not all bad, and not all people who work for it are bad. Some amazing engineers work in the oil industry and do incredible stuff.
There's a lot of products that get made. It's not just transportation.
Exactly.
It's not just fuel, right?
Yeah.
Which I think it's a good argument. We need to save.
We need to save it and use it for other things.
For the other things that we haven't found alternatives.
Yeah.
But moving our corpses around, there's better ways to do that. So
There's got to be better ways to do that. Yeah.
Powering our lights, better ways to do that. You don't burn it.
Yeah.
Don't waste it.
I'm really proud. I mean, like today, because it's been quite sunny today. When I got back, so I've been working away. When I got back, the battery was full. So everything that I'm lit with here is solar.
Battery.
But it's at night. It's late at night here. Yeah.
You did a video installing your power walls, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Did that do well? I think when it
I mean, it is. I think they're good. I mean, they certainly work, and this is what is annoying. That annoys me about other cars, but also makes me hate Elon Musk and Tesla because they're very good. So their software.
It's amazing.
The software that control is so good. It always works. It's really simple to use. I can understand it. It didn't go wrong when then the installation's a bit awkward. And then everyone else, you get a test car from a big manufacturer and it's got an app and you can control the car from the app. No, I can't. It won't work. It won't connect to the car. Instantly the Tesla connects. It's just there. Done it. I don't know. So that stuff they've really got right.
It's seamless.
For the Powerwall, the software for the Powerwall is absolutely. I can control it all the time. So the settings now I'm used to it. So at this time of year, normally in the winter, as we go into winter, I charge it at night on my very cheap off-peak, and then I kind of save it until the early evening when electricity is very expensive, and that's when it's used. So in the last sort of 18 months, I've never used electricity between the hours of 4 from the grid, between the hours of 4 o'clock in the afternoon, like 8 o'clock at night, not once. And that's really been my aim because that's our dirtiest electricity. That's when we're burning.
What has that done to your bill? Annual bill.
It's definitely reduced it. But if you look at I'm too old to really benefit. I can't live long enough to pay it all back. So it's I'm definitely an early adopter.
Okay.
Unless I become as my son has suggested, that I become a brain in a jar.
Yes.
Then I might benefit
with a mechanical body.
Yeah, but it's cost quite a bit to install. But my power bills in the summer are crazy low. I mean, a month's electricity is under £10, so about £8, so maybe $10, $12 a month, with 3 electric cars and a house with electric everything's electric, water heating, So that is.
So you have to take in consideration the fuel expenses that you used to have, and then attach those to not just electricity, but like diesel fuel.
Diesel fuel and we use LPG for cooking. We used to use a liquid petroleum, so gas, because we're off. Gas. There's no gas mains here. We're out in the sticks, but the reduction in those costs are very substantial, really big. But then we've got there's a product that I think we've had on the show called the Zappy Charger, which there's loads of different types of that, but it's such a simple one to use. So I'll plug the Tesla in to the Zappy in the day when it's sunny, and and it takes like by 10 o'clock in the morning, the batteries are at 100% because I didn't use much the night before, the house batteries, and then every electron that would have gone into the grid is diverted into the car. And it goes down. And what's amazing is how low a Tesla can charge, the low power, but then it goes up to, so I've got only got 5.5 kilowatts of solar here. So I might put 30 or 40 kilowatt hours into the Tesla, which is 200 miles, 150 miles, for no cost. And I'm not waiting, I'm not doing anything else. I'm not driving it, it's just, I'm doing other stuff. I'm working here. And when that happens, that is such an amazing change, because not only have you not used any power, and then at the end of the day, when it gets dark, I've got the batteries are full, so I don't use any power at all. So there are days where our use of grid electricity is less than a penny. There is always some, because there's some monitors and sensors that we've got in the system that only use mains power, but it's a tiny amount. It's a tiny amount. So that is extraordinary. But that is, a British summer is like a cold autumn in Los Angeles, where everyone's complaining and putting coats on. That's as good as it gets here. So, our solar, there is a great example of this. A friend of mine in Sydney, Australia, has exactly the same solar system I have, same inverter, same number of panels on his house in Sydney. And if I look at my daily production of solar on a perfect cloudless English summer day, very rare, it goes like that, and then it goes up, and then it goes like that, and that's the day. His is, in Australia, it's night. It's day. It's like that. It's night. It's just on or off. There's none of this curvy stuff. It's just like on. And he produces triple what I can in a day. It's extraordinary how intense their sun is there. It's very different.
Is that because of the latitude where you guys are at?
They have, effectively, we have much, like in our summer, our days are from, because we're much further north, from say 4 in the morning till 9:30 at night is sunny. So really long days.
Okay.
Amazing. So then you get this really long period of generation, but not that much in the beginning and the end. Whereas in Australia, it's more like a tropical thing where it's dark, it's light, it's dark.
Yes.
Very little dawn. We have very long dusks and dawns, that take hours. So where he is, Sydney or further north in Queensland, is the equivalent of Central Africa, in terms of its temperature and climate.
Yeah, and we're similar here. We get quite a lot of sun most of the year, long days, right? Not a lot of clouds here. It doesn't rain much. I think we get 10 days of rain during the year here. We're in a desert. And so, and everybody's putting solar panels. It's creating quite a bit of it's just stressing out our grids.
Yes,
and I think the answer is to put batteries.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm preaching all day, every day. Put batteries. You got to put batteries in your garage. Yeah. You can't afford the real ones? Hey, DIY cobble up some batteries. I'll show you how to do it. Then
I think the thing I'm sure you could do it. That's my project. This is what I wanted to ask you. I said, I want you to do the project where you develop, because you know how to do it, a vehicle to grid system for one of your cars that you've converted, because that is, I think, from what I can gather, quite a complicated thing to do. So the system I saw today, it's really interesting. We've done a program about it today, is a system that what have they developed? How have they developed it? I'm trying to remember how it works. Yeah, it is taking AC out of, so the car. So this is in a Nissan Leaf. The Nissan Leaf has a system built into it from the CHAdeMO charger. So a CHAdeMO is a DC charger. Charger. An AC. I never get this right.
No, it's DC. Yeah,
it's
anything
DC.
That's fast is DC. Yeah,
that's right. It's a DC charger. What their wall box does is switch that so that you're putting AC into your house or the grid.
Yeah, it's just a grid inverter.
But it goes. But it's a two-way inverter. It's as simple as that. But at the moment, only the Nissan Leaf with CHAdeMO can do that bi-directional stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. Like, I know. Remember, there's the news that came out that Tesla's had the
I love that story. Yeah.
And then, like, some engineers no, they have bridge rectifiers, so you can't do it. But I was thinking about this. I'm like, wait a minute, you wouldn't have to go through the charger, because that's a DC to DC. Like, you could go the fast charging route, which is just contactors that connect the terminals of the battery straight into that port. Right. That's what you would need. So that in essence, every Tesla is already ready to go. Because
Yeah.
they have those contactors. They can fast charge. That means they can deliver fast DC into the port, which that's
Right.
what you need to
Yeah.
do grid to grid.
Because I mean, the thing I know that is happening. So there's a company here that's developing a Type 2, what we call Type 2, so a 7 kilowatt connector,
Okay.
the standard connector that we use here for anything other than rapid charging. So any like a dumb box on the wall with a socket, that's a Type 2 connector.
Yeah.
To use that 7 kilowatt, because actually, if you can measure what your house is using, so your freezer, fridge, your water heating, your cooker, to get over 7 kilowatts, you've got to turn everything on.
It's quite a bit,
That's a lot of power.
Even
And
here in
that's what
California, when
Yeah.
we have our AC on, it's only like 4 kilowatt.
Yeah,
Have a 4-ton unit, and then the lights and TVs and stuff.
It's nothing.
The
Lights
days
and TV is
rarely.
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be so much cheaper. At the moment, we can only use. So I have a system here, a CHAdeMO connected vehicle to grid charger. Vehicle to house. Thing.
Okay.
But it's only CHAdeMO, and ironically, my Nissan Leaf is the very original one made in Japan, which is the only Nissan Leaf. There's only about 300 of them that can't do vehicle to grid.
Oh,
so
no way.
It was the sort of second generation that they built could do it. So any
Yeah.
newer Leaf, anything that from 2012, mine was 20. I think mine was built in 2010. It's really one of
Yeah.
the early ones.
I think you're right. I should try to DIY a thing.
But I'm
because
sure you
it's
could.
really
I'd love
easy.
to see a DIY vehicle to grid system, because and also not trying to do a rapid. You don't need 50 kilowatts.
don't
What
need-
house is going to use 50? You need 7.
No. You need 7.
6 or 7,
And that's
something like that.
that equipment is rare.
It's
the
generally
only-
cheaper, isn't it?
The
stuff
only
that you're
problem is that you're dealing with voltages that are non-standard for
Yes.
grid tie
For the-
inverters.
Yeah, and for USA housing, because we're 240 volts here. You're only, what are you, 110 in the
No,
USA?
we have 220. It's split
Oh,
phase, right?
right.
Yeah, it's a split phase, but it's just the same thing. We only use half of it.
Yeah,
That's the only difference. So we
that's
use
right. Yes.
Yeah, but we could use 220, and
Yeah.
devices. We usually reserve that to larger devices, like
Yeah.
the RACs use 220,
Yeah.
the whole phase, not just split phase. But yeah, you're right. I think it would be easy to use the solar inverters, because the solar inverters have this huge range of voltage that they can
That's
accept.
right. They do. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I have a couple of them. I wouldn't even have to buy anything. I have all the equipment to try that.
yeah.
I
'Cause
think
I've
you've
got
given me
an
a
old
good idea.
inverter on a shelf next door, and I just go, I'd love to be able to. I mean, I'm just terrified of electronic engineering. That's why I'm so impressed with what you do. I wouldn't know where to start. I mean, I do genuinely understand how a steering assembly works, or even how a transmission works. I can see that's a gear, and that drives that shaft, and that turns that wheel. I can get that, but when it's like, it's scary. An inverter, I don't know what that does. It's got things.
Yes.
It's got wires coming out. It's too frightening. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm just amazed that you I'm very impressed with
Yeah,
that skill set you have.
and I have no training. I just trial and error my way into
Yeah.
stuff, right? And I've been doing it for years. And some people look at me and they go, "Wow, you're just so irresponsible, and you're so dangerous, and you're so And I'm like, yes, yet I'm happy. I've never electrocuted myself. I never burned anyone's house. It's working. You know what I mean? Like, people have this tendency to the only way to do stuff is the proper way, and I'm like, no, because my whole existence is I've been trial and error my way through life, and it.
But I mean,
seems
you
to be
do.
working
I
fine.
think you definitely do have an understanding of the basic physics and the basic principles.
You have to
of
do your
of-
homework, yeah.
Yeah.
But it does. You don't require a certificate, right, of
No,
acceptance or of. You don't need to ask permission. You need to ask forgiveness. That's my.
Yes,
that's
true.
That's my motto in life,
I've tried that in my marriage, and it's occasionally come undone. I'll admit that. I didn't ask permission. Yeah, but you should have done. Well, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Sorry's not good enough.
Yeah, so that's what we're doing. But that's a great idea. I never thought about it.
Yeah.
Out of all the crazy ideas that people pitch to me, No one's ever said you should try a vehicle to grid, and then I'm
Well, because I mean, if you're
Wait a
building
minute,
the,
that would
you know,
work.
if you're converting the vehicle, so you know you've got the wiring there, and you go, well, you know,
Yeah.
it just seems to be, and so you're not trying to convert an existing manufactured car that doesn't have that stuff built into it.
No.
You're kind of starting
It's-
from scratch.
It's actually rather easy when a
Should be.
DIY
I'm
version.
sure it is, yeah.
I don't know if you saw this video like a couple years ago. People always say like, can you attach like an extra battery to your car, like a trailer?
And you
full
did
of
the trailer. I
batteries?
do remember it. Oh, I love that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that was this very simple project. It didn't take much. I installed a plug, installed the plug with the batteries, bloom. You know,
Because
how
what was your
about
what was your total capacity of the car and the trailer then?
at that
time?
point was somewhere around 70 kilowatt hours. Yeah,
Right.
so it was a legit, range
long range
on a-
car. Yeah.
Yeah. And and the
brilliant.
DIY it doesn't really exist because we all have these big batteries that don't fit in
Yeah.
we have to couple them up in some place where they were not designed to hold batteries,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
But when you put it on a little trailer, so here's another thing that people go like, can you travel the world just purely on solar, batteries?
Yeah.
On a solar, you carry your own little solar
Carry your
system
own
with
solar,
your battery,
yeah.
and you're going like, well, then technically it's possible. Now in the real world, can you do it? So I think watching this Ewan go through this thing and
Yeah.
the Rivians and stuff, I have an early reservation on the Rivian, right? So I thought,
Right.
like, what if
Yeah.
I build a trailer with full of batteries and solar panels,
Yeah.
and as soon as I get it, I connect it, and then I go travel, see how far I can get
Yeah.
without plugging. It'd be like Jehu across the U.S. unplugged
Yeah.
or something,
That'd be
and I do
fantastic.
a series.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna try it. I think I'm gonna do it.
If you do it, I want to ride with you on a part of the journey.
There
No, 'cause
you
I'll
go.
tell you what. Okay, so I went to a Prius launch of a new version, a new version of the Prius. This is in Los Angeles, but 10, 12 years ago, long time ago.
Okay.
And so it was out in the desert. I don't even know where we were. Beautiful part somewhere northeast of Los Angeles. I can't remember. Somewhere sort of desert-ish, rocky, mountainy, desert-ish. Beautiful, beautiful place. And we were out in the middle of nowhere, and they did catering. But what was incredible was a massive diesel pickup truck came chugging up to the site we were in. And it was towing this big trailer, and this dude got out of the pickup truck and pressed a button, and this beautiful array opened up like
Of
that.
solar
Huge,
panels.
massive. I think it was like a 20 kilowatt solar array. It had some lead acid batteries built into the trailer. It was all in the trailer. He tipped it, so he parked the trailer so it was facing vaguely south. It was at a nice angle like that. Power cables out to that, to cookers, to the lighting. So we were sitting in the middle of the desert, surrounded by beautiful lights on a table with catering and chefs cooking stuff. And,
Wow.
and it was all powered by that cooker, even into the evening. It was the most amazing night. And I went, I want that trailer. I want a camper van with that trailer. Because that was, my dream, the other dream, apart from going to Costa Rica, is to drive around Australia. Originally, I wanted to do it in an electric car. There's so many people have done it already. It doesn't. That's
okay.
been done. But I wanted like a big camper, like a Winnebago, but with that on the roof, so that you park up and you open the big solar thing, and it's kind of keeps you in the shade in the hot day.
Yeah.
Inside the camper, and then it takes 2 days, maybe 3 days to charge the car, charge it, and then you drive another 200 miles and you stop again. You're not in a rush to drive around Australia, which is thousands and thousands of miles without plugging in ever.
Without ever
Would be
plugging in.
so cool,
Yeah.
wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I know that it's technically possible. It's very possible. It's just I don't think a lot of people have tried it, or if people have tried it, they haven't documented it
Yes.
correctly, right? With maximum, what is it that I do? I inspire people, right?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
To inspire the most amount of people. That's what we want to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, this stuff is possible. This guy had that trailer full of batteries. I'm surprised. This is 10 years ago, right?
Oh, it's more than.
More
I
than
think it's
10,
more
20
than 10.
years ago.
The thing is, I'm still in touch with. He's a really nice dude from Toyota, who's who invited me along to that event. So I'll ask him whether, because I don't know who that was or what that was. I don't know what It's one of those things where you're at one of those events and this stuff happens. You go, that's amazing.
That's
They
so
yeah, sure,
early
it's the
on.
solar trailer. Yeah.
So early on. I mean, this is
Yeah.
revolutionary now. EV West has a team. I don't know if you saw them. They got the land speed record.
Oh, they did. I haven't
did.
seen. I didn't know they got
So
it. I
they
saw them
built
building
this
the
car out of a Tesla, with the modified Tesla motor. And then in order to charge it, because they're out in Bonneville, this is the middle of nowhere, just the salt flats, right? Yes. Desert. So in order to charge it, they took this, one of their partners has a trailer full of lithium batteries and solar. And now in 2020, this is revolutionary. People are like blown away. So you imagine you're like, 20 years ago, we saw this, it's in LA. But the problem with that is that nobody ever documented in a way that inspired the rest of the world, right? Yes, and so that's what we're doing here. We're not doing the first thing. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm thinking like, I'm a badass because I'm driving this converted, old classic VW bus. Yeah. A guy did this in 1968.
You're kidding. I didn't know that. Wow.
A 1957 Samba bus. Wow. They did a battery, and they competed against, it was MIT against Caltech. Wow. And they raced across America to each other's schools, right?
Right.
Campuses. Wow. And the bus won by half an hour. It took like 2 weeks or something to make it. Yeah. This is in 1968.
1968. So that was lead. They must have had lead acid batteries.
Oh, they used some weird chemistries. It was like it was sulfur, salt. I don't know what metals they used, right? But it was a battery that would get extremely hot.
Right.
When they were using it, they had to dump like ice in it, and there's pictures of them stopping at like some convenience store and just dumping bags of ice in the battery. So they could
scary. God.
But
wow, isn't that amazing though? Wow.
What's that? Nickel cadmium.
And then lithium iron phosphate.
Lithium iron phosphate.
Lithium iron phosphate. Right.
This is early. This is
wow, I
before
didn't know that was around then. Yeah.
So at that time, I remember reading the article. It was next generation. Like this technology.
It would have been unheard of at the time, wouldn't it? But I mean, that was also because that was. I think that is another key thing, certainly for my generation. So when I was a teenager in the early 70s, we had the oil. You're too young to remember, but we had the oil crisis, which affected the whole world. So I mean, I've got pictures of around here where there were a queue to buy gas miles long, and you could only buy 1 gallon. And the same happened in the States. I mean, it was a big sort of social.
It was in the 70s, right?
Yeah, early 70s. And we had chaos in this country. We had power cuts all the time. Which it wasn't directly, it just kind of the society sort of unraveled because there was no petrol. Then there was there was a strike of the miners. There was no coal for the power stations. I was in a cinema in London watching a movie, and it went, and the whole thing went dark, and a lady came out with an oil lamp. You'll have to leave now. It's like going back 100 years. And you go out in the street, and the only light was from cars and the buses. There was all the shops shut, restaurants closed, black, just like a blackout. Extraordinary. So that stayed with me, the fragility of the world that we completely take for granted. I went, this can go wrong really, really easily.
I think people don't get that, right? Like here in America, the grid is very stable.
Yeah, same here. It is here. That's the only time I've ever known that. Yeah,
we lose power for 1 hour, 2 hours, maybe once a year or every 2 years or something. But I think people don't get that in the last few years, in the last 10 years, we've become so dependent.
Yeah.
Like we literally would know if there's no power within seconds, right?
So,
we have lights. We're either watching TV, we're in front of the computer.
Or the cell towers that you rely on. Even if you're out in the woods and you got your phone, it suddenly won't work because the cell towers will die. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's going to be chaos. The day that we have extended periods. And we're starting to experience that here in California because the grid is it's struggling so much to keep up. Yeah. With not just growing demand, right? It can't keep up with the growing demand, but also with these fires and all these things, right? That we're starting to now get regularly interruptions in the grid, right? Either schedule, and there are a few hours a day, a few days at a time. So this is why my business is booming because people are like, oh my God.
I want a battery,
we need a battery. We need a battery just for what if, we can't be out with the power with 2 days. In the summer with elderly parents at home, or we all have these CPAP machines, right? Like I
don't know what that.
So apparently we all have crooked teeth here in America because our mouths are so small. Apparently this is a thing that's happened because we eat mush. We don't eat
But
we eat soft
beautiful-
foods.
Americans have beautiful teeth. English, we've got the bad teeth. We
Well,
want to hang on to that.
they're
We're
all
proud of our
fake.
bad teeth.
They're all fake. I've had like 20 visits to the dentist by the time I was 10, right? It was crazy. And what that's doing is reducing our size of our mouths, and so we can't breathe at night. We have this
Right.
sleep apnea. And so we have to use these machines, CPAP machines. So now when the power goes out, now it's not just an
Oh, they
inconvenience.
stop. Oh my God.
Now it's a health risk. Like now
Yeah.
we could die. You know what I mean? Like half of Americans have used these little machines.
Wow.
And when the power goes out, you're in real trouble.
Yeah.
And so now that's the reason why I'm like, you got to get a battery. You got to put a battery.
Yeah.
You got to build
Yeah.
a battery. You can't afford one. There's secondhand battery. There's a whole industry of trash that we've been sending to China. We don't have to send it to China. I'm taking it. I'm bringing it here into my little warehouse, and then we're sending it back to other people.
Yeah.
I'm showing them how to build batteries and little batteries for emergency things. You know, we took
Yeah.
a bunch of them to disaster zones like Puerto Rico.
Right.
We helped like 25 families over there. You know, it was
fantastic.
It was
Wow.
a modest thing, but it
Yeah,
was all
but it was
crowdfunded.
important,
Yeah, and we changed the lives of these people because they were in these remote areas in the island, and they were not gonna get the grid back.
Yeah.
Right? It's like that island's such a mess.
Yeah.
That the only way for them to get electricity was to get these little batteries and
Yeah.
solar panels, you know, and put them in their things.
Because
So-
there's a group of guys who I met when they were students who are doing that in Africa now. That they're there was some English dude that was, I can't even talk about him, such an idiot, was going on. You know, you're the sort of person who'd force Africans to live in fuel poverty with all your fancy solar nonsense. And you hear that, and if you don't know anything about it, you go, we should let them build coal power. He wanted to export coal to Africa so they can have coal power plants. And then you meet these guys who are actually there doing this stuff. So there's a kind of brilliant economic systems which allow people to lease, purchase one solar panel. They put it on the roof of their house, building, whatever it is, literally sometimes straw hut. Mm-hmm. And that runs lights inside so they don't burn kerosene, so the kids don't get burnt or get choking on it, all the horrendous stuff that goes on with that. And it's this tiny little step. It's exactly what you do. So they're using 18650s in a little box like that, secondhand. They've got a system which tests hundreds of them, and they put the good ones in that. They've got a little bit of software that runs in it. All it does is run 3 LED lights in the building so that the kids can do homework. They've got lighting, and they're now doing cooking, electric cooking. They're kind of stepping up. That it's transformed those areas. And these are people where if they ever get a grid connection, it's going to be in 50 years because they're so far from where there could be a power plant. They don't need it, and they've worked it out. You know, you don't.
Yeah.
And here's what can they do? They can plug their cell phones in. They've all got cell phones. They all use cell phones for paying for stuff. It's absolutely critical. That
their energy needs are so minuscule compared to ours.
Yeah, tiny.
That a tiny little system could make a huge difference in their lives.
But there's a mate of mine who's an architect who's built this rammed earth. He designed it, didn't build it. Rammed earth hospital, children's hospital in. I think it is rural Nigeria. It's somewhere in Central Africa. Very poor area, and they've built this hospital where there's no infrastructure to support it. There's no grid connection. There's no, they've had to work out how to get water in, how to have filtration so they can have sanitary conditions and operating theatres, all that stuff. Really challenging. And what this building is, the whole roof, massive solar panels on the roof, and of course it's in Africa. They're flat. They're not at an angle because where does the sun go? It goes up there and down there. There's no kind of north south. It's just right above them. Yeah. And that generates more power than the hospital can use. So they're now supplying all the little groups of housing that are near where this hospital is. Yeah. And it's the most amazing building, and it's rammed earth. It's not even. It's made of the earth that is there. They didn't bring anything. They didn't bring concrete in or all that stuff. And
isn't that crazy?
The solar panels protect the building from because when they get rain there, they get a shit ton of it. I mean, it's a lot, very suddenly, and that's protecting the building. So there's amazing.
I think
stuff is incredible.
I think those places will skip the whole grid part.
Yeah. They don't need a grid. It's waste of money.
It's a waste of resources. Yeah.
Yeah.
All those poles, all those trees that you have to cut.
Yeah.
If you make them out of wood, all that extra work, all that cable. You don't need
Yeah.
that. Cable is expensive. The copper, right? It's
Yeah.
like, just put the generation there where it needs it.
Yeah.
It was a new world we're living. It's not.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not the 1800. That's 1800
Yeah.
technology.
Yes, 1800s. You build a coal plant and you have a big wire, and exactly.
Yeah, this is Nikola Tesla's vision.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
a guy that you live 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to do that. Well, Robert, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you
No,
for
it's
giving
been
me
amazing.
your time.
And I just realised time has flown. I mean, but
Yeah.
it's been so lovely to talk to you, Jehu. It's really good to connect
I
with you.
definitely want to be part of your next trip here to
hopefully
the U.S.
Hopefully,
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be at least a year, and possibly longer. But we're determined to do it because I mean, just very briefly, Dan, who runs the shows and who's the managing director of the little company we've got. When he said, "Oh, I want to do a show in Austin, Texas," I didn't even speak. I mean, it's like crazy. The guy's gone.
It was
mad.
his idea.
Yeah, I said he's gone. Why?
Okay,
One,
to tell you the truth, we all thought you were crazy.
Yeah.
When you guys pitched that to us, even me and Michael talked about it, and we're like, Texas, Austin. Now, Austin, it's a beautiful city. I've
amazing
always
city.
had fun,
Yeah.
been there, right? But we're like, Texas. What is wrong with these dudes? We were like, what is wrong with them? And I mean, you guys hit the nail right in the head because Austin now.
Yeah, I mean, that's becoming it'll be the electric car center of America, won't it? With the new Tesla factory. It's just crazy.
How crazy is that?
Yeah.
And it's not. And I don't know if you know that site that he chose to is very close to that place where
It's really near. Yes, I do know.
It's right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
We drove by there every day when
every
we were
day,
going.
yeah.
It was there. It was the
It's
thing.
extraordinary. I mean, I'd love to be able to claim that we knew that. We had inside knowledge. We so didn't. We had no idea. We had absolutely no idea. But but then when it was, I think it was actually sold out. We couldn't sell any more tickets. I go, God. Because that was the same thing happened here on a slightly smaller scale. I was just skeptical about it. I thought, maybe some 100, 200 people will come along to the first one we did here. Because this was a same thing, a motor racing circuit, but really a long way from no public transport. No, you had to come in a car, nothing. And it was absolutely sold out. The 2 years we did it, we couldn't get any more people in. There was big queues. It was amazingly successful. And I had to then go, okay, I'll listen to Dan.
Let's do America.
I'd met him. He organises big events like that. So I'd met him from being a speaker at one of the events that he was doing. That's where we first met. And and
it was a total success. We all enjoyed it. And we definitely want to see it grow. I think now, there's a lot of people from California moving to Austin now.
Yes, yeah.
Because
I didn't know that till we were there. Yeah,
it's craziness here. Like the cost of living is going crazy here in California, right? And Texas just seems like it's such a late. Austin, for those of you who haven't been to Austin, Austin's amazing city. So laid back.
Yeah.
Just the culture there is amazing, right? It's so different. That's so structured in California, and the food is amazing.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, it's an amazing place.
I love the accent as well because I met a couple of it's a Texan woman we met this time we went, and she didn't mind. I said, "Look, I'm just going to listen to you. Do you mind?" She was such a nice woman. She said, "What do you mean?" I said, I just want to hear you do. It's such a beautiful accent. I love it. And I said, I just want you to say "y'all" for me because I can't do it and it's never going to work. She said, I don't know what. It was just beautiful. It was such a soft. I don't know what's wrong with y'all.
Yeah.
But then of course it's so typical. Then she goes, "Oh, I love your English accent." And I go, "I hate my English accent. When I'm in America, I'm so embarrassed at my English accent.
Oh, wow.
You really hear it clanging,
Yeah. But now that place was nice. By the way, I got to ride with Blake Fuller, another record holder. He just won his class, 2 classes at Pikes Peaks.
Wow.
And he took me around that racetrack on his car and oh my God, have you ever been with a race car driver on a Tesla?
Yeah.
It's
not
amazing.
in a Tesla. No, I've been driven by
gas cars.
Very fast cars. Yeah.
Okay, you never.
Terrifying.
Tesla. I know Teslas are powerful machines.
Yeah.
Never to that extreme. I mean, I've gone a racetrack on on a NASCAR car with a NASCAR driver.
Right.
This is every bit as good, if not more.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And so it's a pretty amazing thing to experience. You're like, oh my God, these things, this is where the future is at. These machines are not just so efficient, they're so powerful, such raw power under the right circumstances, with the right. And by the way, this is how you got to do it. You got to do it with a professional driver, because he's gonna go fast.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Right, and you're not gonna be terrified that you're gonna die, right? Because your body's telling you that you should not be, experiencing those G-forces, and you should not be taking those turns that fast. But when you're sitting next to a professional driver, you're like, that's fine. He's in the car with me. He's not going to do anything stupid that he's going to kill us, right? So you're like, you can let go of your fears, and you can just kind of experience that thrill of, I mean, it was terror. Yeah. You can process the terror and enjoy it.
Yes.
So that was pretty good. Now you're saying that you're going to change the venue to something more central to. Yeah. Right, it's closer to downtown, which is an amazing place.
Yeah,
that's cool, but we're gonna lose that track.
You're gonna lose
so maybe we have like a thing where one day you go, you have a track event.
Yes, wouldn't that be cool? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a nice
or
idea.
either set up some kind of track in the parking lot if there's.
I think there's not enough space to do that there. I wouldn't think in that immediate vicinity. You could with. You could ride some electric pedal assist electric bikes really fast along by the river.
There you go.
15, 20 miles an hour, crazy speeds.
Yeah.
But I take your point with that, because that's the one thing that we've had great success with in the UK is test drives, which I didn't do that. But so, I think it's 8 different manufacturers had their electric cars there, and you could pre-book and you could take it for a test drive around a track, and that was everybody. It was absolutely booked out from the first day.
Yeah. You're never a race fan until you're in one of these cars and you go fast and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is amazing. This is a fun activity. The other thing that you guys did right, and it was amazing, it's the shuttle service that you guys provide.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a ingenious idea, because it just connects us attendees so much. Right, people that are in the fans, they're going because they want to see a car. Maybe they get to drive it in. Right, you guys picked volunteers out of the crowd and in their Teslas or whatever electric cars. I mean, I would have loved to have taken my bus and then just shuttle people around. Right,
great, yeah.
But it was.
That happened spontaneously here. That's where that idea. We didn't organise it, so the setup at Silverstone, which is this motor racing circuit, is quite awkward. Then they've changed it now. But you would park here. There was the track, and then the exhibition hall was here. So it was literally just the other side of the circuit, of the racing circuit. But you couldn't go from there to here. You had to go all the way down there and underneath the track and then all the way back. So it was quite a lot. It was like a mile and a half. It was quite a long way. Yeah. So that was Tesla owners club in the UK, all turned up, like 80 guys in their Teslas, and they just queued up, and then you get in the back of a Tesla. And so this is the great thing. The speed limit on these service roads, I think, is 20 miles an hour. And we got a call on the first day or the second day from one of the marshals, on his walkie-talkie. Can you have a word with someone? I've just done a speed check. A Model X has just gone past me at 122 miles an hour. And with kids in the back screaming.
They were launching them.
The roads are quite safe because there's no traffic. They're not public roads. They're private roads. But 122, it's like, maybe that's pushing it.
Well,
but what was amazing was you'd meet a family at the event with a little kid, and the dad would be talking to me, and I'd look down at the kid and I said, "Are you enjoying it?" Thinking he might. And they just go, "We went in a Tesla."
Yeah.
They just blown away with it. So of course all the guys that were driving these cars, I was going, "You shouldn't be doing this. You should be." They weren't. One guy drove from Leeds, 150 miles away, drove down, supercharged the car on the way, arrived, did 50 deliveries, drove back home. Didn't even come in. He came down the next day and came down. And he just goes, "You are crazy." But
Wow.
he said, I loved it. I had hundreds of people in my car who'd never been in a Tesla before, and they were all brilliant, So
Yes, that's how you
that was
convert
an
people,
amazing thing.
right? And
Yeah.
we're all, early adopters. We're all like, we're evangelists, electric car
Yeah.
evangelists.
Exactly.
And so we love doing that. We
Yeah.
love making videos. We love putting people in the car, showing
telling
the thing.
people about it.
Because
that was the other thing they did. So I think there was 10 Model X's that do the crazy thing where you press the thing and it does the music and the doors open and the lights flash.
Yes.
And they managed to took them a few goes, with hundreds of people watching. They managed to get them in sync. So there was and all the doors were coming up. It was like I think it was 10 in a row that were all doing it at the same time.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think
Yeah,
it's missing here. It was missing in the U.S. Show about electric cars. The closest thing to that was Jack Rickard, which by the way recently passed away.
Right.
We got the sad news. He had early events where we would show up into a he owned a hangar in a little airport in Missouri,
Right.
and so we would go there and just
Wow.
wrench. It was like all engineers and people that built
Yeah.
their own cars, and we would wrench and we would like help each
Oh,
other,
fantastic.
and then we'd go racing. We had drag races, and we had like little circuit thing that we built. He would rent a little portion of a runway in an airport, right? And so we did that. That's the closest thing that we had to a car show, electric car show here. But it's been a few years since he hadn't done it. And so when you guys come along, I think, I guess we're all rooting for you.
That's very. I know. I mean, it was such a delight for us that you all came. That was the thing. I mean, it was amazing. The people who turned up and came along, and Ben and Chelsea Sexton. Everybody. It was just fantastic that it worked, and it was such a. I know. I mean, I think that is what Dan is extremely good at, is picking people for panels. So the panels we have in the UK, we have the most extraordinary people on those panels that. For people who are kind of learning about electric cars, you get people who are just so, specialists in certain areas. So public charging or the grid and how the grid can cope with electric cars. You get someone from the national grid in the UK explaining to an audience of 600-700 people, it's not going to melt the grid. It's actually a positive benefit for the grid, and here's why. And they explain why. And you just see this audience lapping it up, going, oh, I get it. That was happening all the time. People who make tyres that don't produce dangerous particulates. Just the most amazing. You can go into much more kind of granular detail in those discussions. It'd be hard to make a show about that.
Yeah.
We've tried, we do it. But, to go into that sort of detail in those talks is amazing, real privilege that we've done that. And I just always think, no one's going to want to do that on a Saturday afternoon. You look out at the theatre space; it's jam-packed, and there's people standing at the back, and it's there's a real thirst for that information, for that understanding, isn't there? Which is basically, essentially, what the two of us have spent the last few years doing,
Talking,
in slightly different ways. But I mean, I'm so that's why I really love what you're doing, because it's very different to anything we're trying to do, and I just love the style. I think you've just got a very natural communicative style. It's not threatening. You're not sort of saying, look, I know some really serious shit, and you wouldn't be, you're saying, come on, you can do this. It's easy.
Yeah, I'm a nobody and you can do it. Yeah. I'm a nobody of the nobodies, and if I can do it, you can do it, Yeah. So,
No, that's fantastic. But anyway, I must let you go. But I've had a
can't
lovely
wait
time.
to have you see you in person here in the States again, in Austin.
I want to come and visit you there and see.
Oh, yeah, I have a shop now. And I want to show you my little production that I got. My dream is to convert about 10 of these guys and take them to Hawaii, right? Because that's a destination that could use clean energy. We want to preserve it for future generations. And we want to drive a cool car that is clean and fun to drive, right? In Hawaii. We're spending, people rent these Jeeps because they can take the doors off and stuff. But you can kind of get the same thing with these. They have a hole in the top, and they have windows on the top. They're made for exploring, nature and stuff. And so I want to do that, and that's what I'm gearing to work on. And so when I'm ready, I'm going to invite you to Hawaii so you can go and experience the trip, the islands.
One day. Yeah, I want to go there.
Yeah,
please.
Yeah. When these, you never been to the island?
I've never been to Hawaii. No.
Okay,
no.
They're an amazing place. It's like literally. Paradise on earth.
I would love to go. I would love to go.
Oh, right. You want to plug in, obviously, fully charged. Let's see.
I can only say, yeah, it's Fully Charged. It's on YouTube, Fully Charged Show, youtube.com/Fully Charged Show. And we do a podcast as well. And our webpage is fullycharged.show.
Oh, okay. That's
which is
thing.
a very cool address. And
It's
so
all
there's a
about-
lot of all the links and the connection to all the podcasts and the TV show and everything is there. So and we're also just about to, I think we're going to do it next year now, next year, start putting shows on Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime. That's
Slightly
so cool.
different. We're going to kind of do different cuts, longer form shows on Amazon Prime. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
plan.
Yeah, you guys are pushing the envelope in.
We're trying to push the envelope gently.
Yeah, yeah. If you guys are on the fence about any electric car, there's likely you guys have a review of it on your channel or in your thing. So
Yeah.
that's
So we do get to I mean, a really good thing now is we've got a correspondent in China. So we've got someone called Elliot Richards who lives in China. He's married to a Chinese woman. Has a
there you
Chinese
go.
lovely baby who I saw the other day. He waved at me. Lovely, gorgeous little bubba.
Yeah. Are you doing anything on the new Hummer that came out?
No, I want to. It's just so funny. I love that. The commercial they've done is hysterical.
Yes.
So, I've just done a little. I've used some of that. We haven't released it yet. I've done used some of that footage, but I've voiced it like a movie
voiceover.
trailer starring Jason Statham.
Yes, Jason.
He's a
Statham.
farmer. He's ex-special forces farmer, and he's going to save his daughter. So he needs an electric Hummer so he can just drive
course.
through. Yeah.
Yes.
It's always my one moment of thrill. I never spoke to him. I was in a bar in the UK, and there's a TV guy that does like a survival guy, and he teaches you how to eat things in the jungle or whatever. It's called Bear Grylls.
Yeah,
And
Bear
he's
Grylls. Yeah,
oh,
we
you
know him.
Okay,
Yeah.
So there's Bear Grylls, and my wife's got a bit of she's got a bit passionate about Bear Grylls. She thinks he's very sexy, and I was going, yeah, whatever. I'm not impressed.
Yes.
Not going to go and talk to Bear Grylls. And he was behind me there. Then when we left the bar, Jason Statham was sitting at the bar, looking like a.
Okay.
And I walked past, going, "Oh my God, that's Jason Statham! Oh my God!" Like literally walked right past him. That's the only way out. And he went. As I walked past, he went. Like that. I got a little Jason Statham nod, and I was like, "Yes!"
There you go.
I don't know if he recognised me, but he acknowledged my existence.
There you go. There
I
we
was
go.
just made up.
It was
He's my
sort of
hero
like
now.
when I went to it was the Boring Company, and Elon was there, and
Right.
he's like a superstar there.
Yeah.
And we're all like, "Hey, Elon," and he looks at me and he shakes my hand or whatever, and you're like, this guy he looks at me, he knows me,
Yeah. Yes, because I met him in London when the Roadster was launched here. So it was a little event, a tiny little event in a showroom, in a really small showroom, tiny, really early days of Tesla. And he wasn't. Well, I think I knew who he was then, but he wasn't a big, well-known figure. Certainly not in this country. He wasn't a big, well-known figure. People have said to me, "Have you met Elon Musk?" I go, "Well, yeah." I went up to it. Someone said, "Robert, this is Elon." I went, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you." And he said, "Nice to meet you too." That's the full extent of our interaction. Nothing else. Then someone else pushed in and wanted to talk to him, But yeah, so it was. So I think I can't really claim that that Elon and I are best mates and know each other.
Yeah,
well, but
no.
I've shaken his hand. He's a very nice man.
Yeah, we geek out. We all geek out on different people, and then it was that was part of the weird part. Fully Charged Live, people would come to me. They were like lining up to talk to me, and they want my signature, and I'm like, "Listen, you're talking to the wrong guy. I'm just a regular dude. You know what I mean? Like, don't. I'm not like."
You're not. You're a
It was really
hero.
strange.
Yeah,
It was strange,
yeah.
to come to see people. They come just to see me, from far away. You're like, what? That's crazy. Yeah, I came
amazing,
just
isn't
to see this guy, and you came to see me. What is going on here?
Yeah.
Well, Robert, thank you very
must do.
much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Can't wait to see you here next year, and we'll do something together. I'll invite you to do one of my trips, one of my projects.
Oh, we'd be so good.
And then, all right. So, thank you, and
Take care.
we'll see you.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.